Join the meeting.
Okay, Jennifer, can you just let me know if everybody's in? And you're on mute.
Everyone's in. The last
Okay,
one
good.
just joined.
All right, we're ready to begin. Recording has begun. Good day, everybody, morning or afternoon. I'm Claire Regan, president of SPJ, and I'm welcoming you to today's board meeting. I also want to make sure you know that Fred Brown is here today, former national president. Fred, if you can give a wave. Also Ethics Committee Chair. He is acting as our parliamentarian. Thank you for that volunteer service. And Mark Balin, our attorney, SPJ Attorney Counsel, is here today as well, joining the meeting. Thank you for being here. I'm calling the meeting to order, and Israel, can we go on to the roll call, please?
Absolutely. Let's take a roll call. Claire.
Here.
Ashanti Blaze Hopkins.
Here.
Emily Block.
Here.
Daniela Ibarra.
Here.
Jody Rave Spotted Bear. Jody is not here.
On her way in. Yes.
Okay. Adam Sennett.
Here.
Kevin Smith.
Here.
And Peter, and I apologize, Peter, your last name. Peter's Kelly, right?
Say K, but that's okay. You're not the
Thank
first one to get stumped by that.
Thank you, brother.
Here.
And then I'm here. Except for one, Madam Chair. Seven, we have 8.
Good. Thank you, Israel. Okay, so today's meeting is focused on the budget. The board and staff have worked hard, sometimes 24/7. And I just want to thank all of them for their hard work. There have been many robust discussions and relevant questions brought up on many platforms. And I also want to say I appreciate that as well. I see this as passion for our organization. I know everybody cares about the present and future of SPJ. To that end, I have added an extra public comment session to the agenda. So there are 2, first one being about the budget, second one being about anything else the public would like to raise in the interest of transparency and clarity. My goal today as president is to move us forward and toward a budget approval so the work of the society can move forward as well. And I hope we all channel our passion to the best possible outcome today. With that, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is meeting minutes. We have 2 minutes for approval. February 25, 2023 and April 6, 2023. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Daniela. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Hey, Peter. Peter Seke is seconding. Okay, discussion. Corrections and discussion.
Jennifer Ellis has a note in the chat about the minutes. I think there might be a quote or something. I'm still reading it, but I just want to flag that.
Yeah, I think Jennifer, can you clarify about corrections to the minutes, please?
Yes, Jennifer emailed those to me earlier this week, and I've got them. I'll make those edits to the minutes before we save them.
Anything else? Okay, is that Jennifer Ellis is adding an additional correction and you're noting that, Jennifer Royer?
Yes,
Good,
thank you.
excellent. Any other corrections or comments? Okay, with that, I think we're ready to move ahead and take a vote on approval of both minutes together as one vote. All those in favor of approving both minutes, please say, raise your hand or both.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Both minutes have been approved and we can move on to the next item, which is the president's report. President's report is posted in the Dropbox. So I'm going to keep my oral report short and efficient. Just highlight a couple of non-budget accomplishments, just to let our members know that we are doing other work. We've gotten a good number of requests for comment from different news outlets, which just shows that our voice matters. SPJ's voice matters on a national level. CNN has requested several comments and we've issued quite a few statements about different topics. I also listed on my items that we're establishing a task force in response to a Media Fest incident. And that task force is in progress already, working led by Danielle McLean to establish a code of conduct for the society, which is very helpful. Other organizations have it. So we will have one in place at the end of their work. Also, I've been working to open our meetings through webinar, our committee meetings. Our board policy manual calls for listening in and monitoring by our members. And so our chairs have been encouraged to make that happen and to announce the meetings in advance. So that is happening, which is good. And you can stay tuned to a new look on Leads, our weekly newsletter. I'm working with the staff, Zoe, our communications director, interim director, and intern Kim to give it a sort of a new design, content and design as well. So stay tuned for that. We're working on it and I appreciate the opportunity.
Join the meeting.
I appreciate the opportunity to make that happen. And last but not least, I just want to mention that I have established office hours so members can talk one-on-one. I have 2 sessions on Friday mornings and Sunday evenings, and they've been promoted in Leads, but reach out to me if you'd like to register for one. Want to keep the conversations going. And I think that's it for my president's report, so we can move on to the business at hand. So I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer Royer, our interim executive director, to give her report, please.
Thank you, Claire. I will keep mine short too. There's a list of things that staff has been working on since January. I'll just highlight, we had a really successful Sunshine Week. Jody and her FOI committee did a great job. We did a Day of Giving, and we just are wrapping up Ethics Week, and Fred Brown and his committee has been working with Rod Hicks to put on a lot of really interesting webinars and things this week. So it's been a busy spring for staff, but you can read everything else that we've been doing in my report. So thank you.
Good. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, moving on to our treasurer's report. I'll hand that over to Secretary Treasurer Israel Balderas. Israel.
Hello, everybody. Good Saturday afternoon, and thank you so much for attending today's board meeting. It's so good to see so many faces, so many members who are really concerned about the budget, and I'm so happy to see you all. I'm going to give you sort of a broad picture of what's been going on since December when this board first sat, and then what's happened over the last 4 months. I will then turn it over to Jennifer. She will present her budget. After that, I will then discuss Some of the areas that I'm certainly want to bring to the attention of the board. There are going to be a couple of items within the budget that we have to take a public vote on. And so those will be separate votes before we approve the entire budget. And then on the item, there's room for discussion as well. So when I first came to the membership and to the board back in December, I used the word dire, as in SPJ faces a dire financial situation. Jennifer's going to tell you sort of what's been happening over the last, say, 5 to 8 years, and how did we get here? I think I've seen many members that I've talked to. Earlier this week, for example, I talked to the head of the regional coordinators, Chris Vaccaro, and I said, there has been a series of things that have happened over the years that eventually have led us to this situation. The situation is pretty simple, right? We don't have as much revenues as we have expenses. So to that end, with the help of Claire, we put together a finance committee that was made up of experts who have looked at the budget over the years. And we tried to get their expertise. From the foundation side, Matt Haw, former president, Patty Newberry, former president, Frank Lamonti, foundation member and deputy counsel over at CNN. They lent their advice as to what does it take to look at the financials and to have some hard discussions about what can be cut, what can't be cut, and how do we raise more revenue. From the board side, we have some fantastic people as well. Claire as president, obviously. Ashanti as future president. Her voice is very vital to this conversation. Jody, who has experience running nonprofits, very important. Peter, who I think, Peter, correct, you were president of the Guild in New York when you were at Reuters. Again, having discussions from the labor side, right? What can be cut from the labor side in order to make the budget? And then, so Peter, Jody, Ashanti, and then myself. I don't think I'm missing anybody. If I am, please raise your hand. We have met over a dozen times between, I would say, December and as soon as probably 3 weeks ago, when the Finance Committee voted to present the budget that you're going to see before you today. That meeting was open, like all meetings are always open. That is the policy of SPJ, to allow people to attend and monitor those meetings. They just have to ask, and obviously they asked, and they came. And out of that came a lot of questions from various members. Among the packet, you have documents that lay out the questions of various members and the answers. Jennifer Royer, I think, Jennifer, you submitted this document at 1 o'clock last night, right? So literally you were burning the midnight oil. But that's how serious she takes this discussion. And then, of course, we'll go through line item by item. But we have taken a very hard look at this budget. And what I hope is that every board member who listens to both Jennifer's presentation and then how I will outline my concerns, the big items that are part of this budget proposal, then we can open it up for discussion. So Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you so you can present your budget to the board.
Okay, thank you, Israel. I appreciate it. So in the board packet and the shared folder that everybody has access to, there are a couple of memos. One is from your part-time controller. They closed out the 2022 books, and so they have a memo there that highlights just what happened in 22. And I will just point out that they did not find any misappropriation of funds. And in my presentation, I'll kind of explain what happened in that year. And then there's another memo that is related to the 2023 budget. As Israel pointed out, there's a Q&A document in there that includes questions from members and the Finance Committee that we've tried to answer as thoroughly as possible. And so with that, I will share my screen and explain just how we got here and where we're headed. Okay. There it is. Okay. So this is just about how we got to where we are, and then what we're proposing and recommending for the rest of 2023. So 2022 was a very unusual year. We lost an ED, we lost several other staff members, including our accountant, our controller, um, administrative assistants, our membership coordinator at the time. So there was a lot of turnover at headquarters. And so we realized pretty quickly that we needed to get somebody in to figure out like what has been going on with the finances, what do we need to do to clean things up and move forward. So we hired your part-time controller in November, and they were working since then to bring us up to date on our 2022 financials while simultaneously working on the 2023 budget. So another roadblock was that staff had to get access to all of the bank accounts, the banking information, the investment accounts. Those were very outdated as far as who the contacts were on those accounts. So it involved a lot of going back and forth to banks, lots of phone calls, lots of getting things notarized. It was a very time-consuming process. So HQ has been operating based on the 2022 approved budgets up to this point, while simultaneously working on the 23 budgets. How we got here continued. So Media Fest was budgeted to bring in a profit of $108,000. $108,000, yes. The 22 convention ended up resulting in a deficit of 14,000. So every revenue line from Media Fest that we were anticipating was inflated. It came in below what was projected, especially the opening night reception. So it was budgeted at $20,000, but it in the end cost us almost $88,000. There were a lot of reasons for this. One, our event planner said that as she was contacting different venues, they were too small or they didn't have enough staff that came back after COVID to host an event this size. So finding a venue was difficult, and we ended up going with the riverboat cruise kind of last minute. That decision was made just because we felt like we didn't have any other option. The NBA actually sponsored the opening night reception for $25,000, which helped to offset some of those costs, but it would have, more sponsorships would have helped, or just finding a lower cost venue. Another kind of roadblock that we had was that we joined ACP and CMA in kind of late to their convention that they were already planning. So an overflow hotel had to be added. We ended up not filling it. So there was also a cost for paying the attrition to that hotel. In spite of the losses, the attendance was 1,900 people, and by most accounts, MediaFest was a success. So, I still think it was a conference that everybody enjoyed. They were happy to get back together in person. So, that is what happened with MediaFest. So where we are now, the 2022 books are closed, and that report is in the board folder. YPTC is going to begin working with our auditors on the 2022 audit. So we have a call with them next week, and then our audit is planned to begin in June. The finance committees for SPJ and the foundation met separately and together several times over the past few months. The SPJ Foundation approved its 2023 budget last weekend. And so once the SPJ budget is approved, we can begin submitting 2023 quarterly reports, monthly reports to both finance committees. So we can keep them posted and we can all monitor where we are in real time. So we had up to 4 YPTC staff members working on our financials, but we're to a point where now we can back that off to 2 people. So, a lot of you have met, well, some of you have met Courtney and Kaylee on the YPTC staff. Courtney's going to be handling SPJ finances, and Kaylee's going to be working on the foundation. where we are now continued. So for the 23 convention, Las Vegas is going to be much more cost effective than DC was. We don't have any partners, so we'll have total control over our expenses. The opening night reception is already set to be at the hotel, so we won't have to pay to, bus people from one venue to another. There won't be any additional costs for the opening night reception. There won't be an overflow hotel, so there won't be any attrition fees, assuming that we fill the conference hotel. And the budgeted expenses are $45,000 less than in 2022. And we're going to continue to monitor those and keep them as low as possible and adjust as needed. And we also increased the registration rates by $10 this year. So the budget process, staff and both finance committees have worked since January on several iterations of both budgets for SPJ and the foundation. Expenses were cut in both budgets so that they would show a surplus. Even though they're small surpluses, they are surpluses, so that's something. The cuts are uncomfortable, but they will still allow for the business of the society to be conducted. The bottom line is that SPJ has lost sources of revenue, such as association management clients. There are some grants that we didn't receive in 2022, but expenses have remained the same and gone up in some cases. So YPT, I mentioned before, they show that the 2022 actuals don't show any signs of misappropriation of funds. And you can read more about that in the memo from them. The 2023 proposed SPJ budget, it has a surplus of $299 after the following cuts. So there's no money in this budget for an executive director search firm. There's no money for a new membership database. Student Leadership Institute is going to have to be put on pause. We're not filling open positions of staff accountant, controller, administrative assistant. The money for my former position as communications director is not in this budget. So while I'm serving as interim, there's really not salary for a comms director or a new ED. But the salaries and related costs are down $322,000 from 2022. Board and regional coordinator stipends in this budget are reduced by half. There are no chapter grants. Staff travel has been eliminated except for convention. There's no cost of living increases or other raises for staff, and reduced spending overall, like for things as small as office supplies or professional development. Those things are all being reduced or cut completely. Just to speak a little bit about the member database, there was a task force that was formed, and it included staff and volunteers to look into the possibility of replacing our current database. The contract for that database ends in a couple days, the end of this month. So we did dozens of demos with various vendors. We did a lot of research about what other organizations use and their satisfaction with their current databases. And there was a clear leader after we did all that research. Unfortunately, it's also the most expensive option. But we, while there aren't funds in this budget to pay for that, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. We're still going to, look for revenue streams that could possibly pay for a new database. So if we find additional funds, that is still, we've done the research, we know kind of where we want to go, and we could implement it fairly quickly. So the current vendor is also working with staff to improve functionality so that we can access accurate data and just, get people accurate information when they want a member list or a chapter list. So we're working with them on that. Crystal's been working really hard to fix the issues. The 2023 proposed foundation budget, just really quickly, the one that they approved last Sunday, it has a surplus of $17,232 in unrestricted funds and about $4,000 in restricted. So because of the market fluctuations, the foundation has a smaller surplus this year than usual. Their investments took a little bit of a hit. So the foundation approved it at its meeting using a 5.5% rolling average on its unrestricted investments so that it would have that $17,000 surplus to award in grants. It's also applying a 4.5% rolling average to the FOI fund. So that resulted in about $4,000 that they could award to an FOI specific grant. They're also covering a larger percentage of staff salaries this year and benefits. So, insurance, 401k, all of that. The foundation board did approve to give $30,000 to continue the Future Leaders Academy. So Karen is working on getting that ready to go in July, probably. And then the foundation board also approved $30,000 to fund a part-time grant writer. So we think that that is going to help a lot, just to have someone on staff who can research grants, see who's giving out money for what. And we're really going to focus, at least initially, on finding grants that would help pay for just the everyday operating expenses of SPJ, and also funds that could potentially help with a membership database. So the good news is we also renewed our grant from Google. So we're going to be offering some trainings later this year in small newsrooms in the South. That was the focus that Google wanted to have this time around. There's an additional $15,000 to $20,000 in this budget in new revenue with a 5% membership. So while I know a membership dues increase isn't good news to a lot of people, dues have not increased since 2011. And this amounts to $3.75 a year for professional members and $1.88 increase a year for student and retired members. So we think it'll be just getting that little boost in revenue, I think will be worth it. And we're not expecting to lose a lot of members because of this increase. So that is built into this proposed budget. A grant writer will help in researching potential funders who can assist with a new database, and then Future Leaders Academy will continue. So more good news. Oops. Sorry, I lost track. So staff has submitted 3 other grant requests, and we're awaiting word on those. Staff is also working on other initiatives to continue develop ideas to bring in more revenue and cut expenses, including membership drives, taking advantage of every fundraising opportunity, advertising and sponsorships, merchandise, contract work, and exploring staffing adjustments. So staff is recommending that the SPJ Board of Directors approve this proposed budget because it's already Q2 of 2023, and we've been operating based on the 2022 approved budget. EDs before me, I've heard this for the 8.5 years I've worked at SPJ. A budget is a guide. It's a roadmap. It's just a management tool. So, it's not something that's set in stone. It's not something that, you have to follow to a T. There's going to be fluctuations in, some things will come in over budget, some things will come in under budget. And like I said, if there is additional revenue later in the year, we can talk again about doing, adding a new membership database or other things that we may be able to just put back into this budget. So, and it really may be one of the most important reasons it needs to be improved is so that our accounting staff can move forward with the work of 2023 and keep the finance committees informed about financials in real time. So that pretty much sums it up. If you have questions, there are email addresses for myself, Israel, and Claire. You're welcome to send us any other questions you have. Hopefully a lot of them are answered in the Q&A document in the folder, but that pretty much sums it up. So I'll give it back to Israel or Claire.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, a couple of preliminary questions. Can you leave that up really quickly so that we can I want to go over a couple of slides. A lot of this information, the finance committee members know this, but I think it's important since we have lots of other members that we sort of kind of lay out the process. I've gotten a lot of questions about the process. So can you go to slide 6, please? Slide 6. One of the questions that I've been asked a lot with regards to why are you approving a budget for 23 in late April, right? Why wasn't it approved much earlier? So let me talk about the process for just a moment. The 2022 budget wasn't reconciled till probably 2 weeks ago. That's how long it took for the YPTC people to make sure and clear up all the books from 22. The other thing too is that the foundation and the board couldn't move forward on their respective budgets until we knew how much money do we have. After all, if we don't know how much money we have, how are we going to approve a budget? The foundation approved their budget last week. One of the things that the finance committee was trying to figure out is what can we get from the foundation, right? The foundation has, I think right now they have $12 million, right? At some point they had $17 million. And there's always a question as to what is the role of the foundation when it comes to the finances of the board. It is my position as the treasurer and as someone who has a fiduciary duty to SPJ to say that the foundation under its bylaws exists in many ways to support the work of SPJ. So therefore the question is, how much money can we get from the foundation so that we can meet our expenses from a database to, possibly hiring staff? And those discussions were being had at some point, separate financing committees and financing committees together. And there was rigorous debate as to how much they can give us, how much we need, right? What was the ask? And so those conversations ended when the finance committee voted on their budget, right? They said yes to a couple of things. They said no to other things that we had been asking, but we couldn't move forward with our budget until we know how much money we have. Can you move on to slide number 7, please? So you will see here, we have a surplus of $299. Now, why is that important? Because for at least 3 or 4 drafts of the budget, the deficits were pretty high, right? The deficits range anywhere from $350,000 to $60,000 at different versions of the drafts. What does draft look without this item? What does this draft look without this item? And so we have $299 without a surplus. We legitimately could not vote on a budget that has a deficit, right? That would be a breach of our fiduciary duty. And I had conversations with the attorney about that. And long ago, back in February, he says, we can't vote on that. Can you, Jennifer, pull up the proposed budget calendar year 2023 document so that we can now show line item by line item?
You want the Excel document?
Yeah,
pulled up?
the Excel, so we can show both the FY23, the adopted FY22, and then the actual 2022.
It may take me a minute, so.
That's fine. So as I'm looking down because I'm looking at my computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that the 299. I don't want to bury the lead because I know we got a lot of journalists here. So let me right off the bat say, I will not be voting for this budget. I'm very concerned for this proposed budget. So members, as I move forward, please ask me difficult questions and I will be more than happy to tell you why I'm very concerned about this budget. As Jennifer pointed out, this is a snapshot. She's absolutely right. If you notice, she said many executive directors have said this for the last 8 years. Absolutely. And in my opinion, that's a problem because a lot of times we don't have the foresight to say what will happen 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now. And when I've looked at past budgets, right, my concern has been, where did these numbers come from? Did they bear any reality to what was happening on the ground? So let's go through these line items by line items for members. Let's take the membership dues as a good example of this, right? The adopted budget for FY22 was $349,000, right? So the previous executive director told the previous board, oh, we're going to make $350,000 in fiscal year 22 at 350. And so the board voted based on that number. But as you can see in column number 4, the actual numbers are $259,000. Now, just let's do the math simply. 75 times 3,500 members is $262,000. If you go to our website, the website says we have 7,000 members. We do not. We have 3,500 paying dues, or 3,500 members who pay $75, right? Now, Jennifer is proposing that for FY23, we're going to make $350,000. Question is, where are we going to get that from? Right now, she said in her presentation, well, we're going to do membership drives. Yep, absolutely, 100%. In one document that I submitted to YPTC, one of the reasons why 350 is there is, well, all we have to do is send payment to members that are within the Impexium system. Okay, but that's why we wanted to get rid of the Impexium system, because if Impexium is costing us money, and Salesforce would be, $130,000, wouldn't it pay for itself if we can now ask members to pay for their dues, right? So my concern is that if you look at the last 5 years, we've had anywhere from a 15% to a 25% decrease in membership. Why? Let's just look at hard data, right? More and more members are leaving the news business for the PR business. We've had a couple of setbacks. We've had inflation. We've had economic downturns. So it makes sense that we've lost members. So the reality is, what are the chances that we're going to go from 3,500 to 4,700 in a year? Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. However, what is the likelihood given the market conditions? And the market conditions that I'm seeing in the next 2 to 3 years are as follows. A lot of our members are being let go. They're getting fired. NPR is letting go of people. News organizations, BuzzFeed is closing up, right? We see that our news industry is taking a hit, and they're going to take a harder hit over the coming months. Why is that? Well, I'm reading in the debt market that there's a lot of pain coming, right? A lot of people borrowed money when it was at 0% interest in order to expand. And now that money is coming due. So what does that mean? Sinclair, Gray, Newstar, all these people owe a lot of money, and they're going to have to let go of members over the next 6 months. What's going to happen when those members are let go? Are they going to stay with us? It's tough to make the bills when you have to choose between groceries and paying, right? So that's one problem. The next problem is we're still in an inflationary period, which means that I think there's a greater likelihood that by the fall, we will be in a recession. I think all indications are pointing that way. So is the likelihood that we can make $350,000? Maybe, but that's a good news public relations approach to the budget. From my vantage point, I would say that the greater likelihood is that that number of 259,000 is going to probably decrease to 200,000. Can a lot of members work hard to increase the membership? Absolutely. But my job as a treasurer is to tell you what I think is more reality based on the finances. So if you reduced that 350,000 to 250, or more likelihood of 200, now you would see that the deficit, can you scroll to the bottom, Jennifer? That deficit of $299 quickly becomes $150,000, right? Now, $350,000 also involves raising fees of our members. Now, I haven't gotten clear guidance as to this, but somebody has said the executive director has sole power to raise the fees by 5%. And then anything higher than that, it would have to be done at the convention. But Matt Hall in the finance committee said, even if that's true, and again, I need to see a memo, I need to see something that says that's true. Matt Hall recommended that we as a board have to vote on raising the fees. We got to be on record saying, absolutely, we got to raise the fees. But I think the more telling thing has been Why haven't fees been raised in the previous few years? Why wasn't that decision made? Because it's controversial. But that's the only way we can increase revenues is by three economic streams, and membership is one of those. So at $350,000, I'm not so sure that money can be made. Can you go to the registration fee? Here's the other one that concerns me. It's $126,000 for the registration fees. So as you can see, the previous executive director budgeted the convention at $225,000. I never thought we were going to make $225,000. And I said this publicly. There was no way we were ever going to make $225,000. And why is that? The days of us making that much money from conventions, they're over. Post-COVID, there's no way you make that kind of cash. Especially, as I just said, given the situation that we face, which is a recession, and we're by ourselves in Las Vegas. So if we're going to say this year we're by ourselves, we could be in a recession. How many members are going to be able to afford $1,200 to come to Vegas, right? Because we're increasing the registration fee, but airfare, I have to go home and see my mom because she's sick. From where I live to El Paso, Texas, I kid you not, it's $850 if I buy the ticket a month out. I can't go see my mom, right? So members are going to have to make a choice as to, can I pay for the hotel, which is going to cost me $1,000, right? 4 days, 5 days at $225, right? That's average, plus $800 in fare, plus an increase in registration fee. And this year, we're not going to be able to offer the things we offered last year. What do I mean by that? Board members, you may recall that last year we had a rigorous debate as to whether or not we were going to comp one day of the conference for those who were speaking, right? Well, that cost us money to comp for speakers. I think it's a good thing. Other people do it. NABJ does it. NAHJ does it, right? It shows, thank you very much for being a speaker at our conference. Let us comp you one day instead of having to pay for 4. We won't be able to do that this year. Because we won't be able to do that, will more and more people say, I can't go speak, right? That's one. And then 2, we won't be able to pay for any speakers. Last year, we paid for Woodward and Bernstein to come and speak, right? It was an honorarium. We can't afford any honorariums. We can't afford any kind of comps for people. They're going to have to pay up straight up. Are we going to make $126,000? I don't think so, right? I mean, I think that's just the market reality of what we face down in October and September. So I would argue that 126, maybe we walk away with $50,000 in expenses. That's 76. So now at $150,000 to 76,000, now we face $225,000 in deficits, and just on 2 budget items. That's what concerns me about this. Now, we're going to go out and we're going to try to get grants. Absolutely. I hope we do. And I'm going to talk about the grant writer in just a few minutes. However, in the past, we have been bitten by counting on grants that never came to fruition. Last year, we got bit because we lost a grant of $175,000 that never came from the Craig Newmark. I don't think we can rightfully say, hey, listen, we're going to be able to make up these deficits by going after grants that we may or may not come to fruition. So when I look at the total revenue of $1,030,000, when I look, for example, at, the awards revenue has come in already. That's money that's in the bank. But just on the revenue itself, in my opinion, anywhere from $200,000 and $250,000. Now, I've asked the YPTC people on everything I just told you. Is this a legitimate concern? Is this a reasonable approach to the budget concerns? And the YPTC people said, absolutely. And I asked them specifically on these 2 items. Is it reasonable what I'm saying? And they said, absolutely, that is reasonable, right? And one of the notes that YPTC people wrote, they said here, SPJ team feels that the headcount is down due to billings not being managed in early 2022, and they can increase active membership now that billings are being done timely, as well as doing membership drives to increase memberships as a whole. If we had a database that was an Impexium, I'd be a whole lot more confident in that. The problem is Impexium has been a problem and we had an answer to it and we lost it. I can just tell you from my point of view, I was agnostic on the database, right? I'm like, okay, you know, it works. Ashanti made a fantastic argument as to why it should be. Frank Lamonte over in Foundation said, when you look at how much we're going to spend in Salesforce versus how much we're actually spending in Impexium and all the other things that we pay for, SurveyMonkey and loss of membership, the difference was going to be $35,000, $35,000. But we lost out on that one. Going forward, am I confident that the people that are running the Impexium are going to be able to increase in the billing? It hasn't been done in 3 or 4 years. I don't know if it's going to be done. We don't have the manpower to be able to do that. Now, I've asked Jennifer and I asked the foundation last week, we need money to pay for Linda Hall to come back and help us out with Impexium, right? Linda Hall, she knows this. She retired. Everybody loves her, but she could help us out with this thing. And I haven't gotten an answer. Certainly, if somebody said to me, Linda Hall is back in the office and she's working to help us with billing on Impexium, I'd feel a whole lot better. But are we going to pay her? We would need money from the foundation for that because we have no money for that. But certainly 3,700 is the head count that we have right now currently. On the expenses, this is the tough one. And this is why I can't vote for this budget. And the finance committee knows this and everybody knows this. Around 40 to 50% of our expenses happens to be associated with labor. That's a very high expense when you're looking at revenues versus expenses. So salaries are pretty high. And that's, by the way, those are salaries at $327,000 with the foundation now paying for 1 full salary of an employee plus half of another employee. I would have liked for the foundation to have taken over fully 2 salaries, but they didn't have the money to do that. If they had, we would have found more money for Impexium, but salaries are high. I made the argument in finance committee and I had no support for it, right? The political will is not there. But because I'm looking at the potential deficits that we face in 23, 24, my argument was we got to let go of 2 employees and we got to cut 401k expense. And we have to increase the insurance that employees pay. I'm not going to tell you how much they pay. I haven't been able to see salaries or 401k. I've asked for that documentation. I don't have access to it, but roughly how much they pay in insurance is way below what I pay in insurance. But if you look, for example, at the expenses of health insurance, the reason that health insurance is going up is because healthcare costs are going up and because employees, you know, paying very low in monthly dues. My argument was we got to raise those fees so that we can cut on the health insurance, on the salaries, and the big items that cost us. There was no political will for that. I asked for a draft budget that presented that. We never had a draft budget. But for those reasons, those are the big items that I'm very concerned that for the next board. So I'm now not concerned about this board. I'm concerned about the next board. That would be Kevin, Ashanti, and Adam. My concern is that when you sit down to take the board, you are going to face anywhere from $200,000 to $350,000 in deficit. And let me be clear on this, right? And I want to praise Hagit Limor as president of the foundation. I've had several conversations with her. I thank her for what she's done for us as a foundation president. She's got 26 members. She's got to balance the needs of those members. I thank people like Alex Jones. Alex Jones in the foundation has said, whatever they need, let's give it to them. Thank you, Alex. Bill has argued the same thing. There have been members who have said, if we got the corpus, let's use it to help SPJ. But those voices are the minority, okay? So therefore, I want to make sure that the board understands this. The foundation has a message for you. This is a one-time deal that they're helping the board. This will not happen again in 23, 24. And they emphasized that at the meeting last week, okay? They're not going to help next year with more money. Again, we don't have a agreement of how long they're going to pay for the employees that they're paying for now. If you look at how much money we're getting from the foundation is now the largest provider of our revenues by far, not even membership or registration. So I thank them for that. But I'm on the side of Alex Jones that says that is our money, right? SPJ and the mission of SPJ, we have used the voice of SPJ to raise the largest portion of that 11 million to 15 million through our actions. So I believe, and I think the bylaws under the foundation agree with me, you exist so that you can help us out. And this is when we needed help. Did they do a lot? Absolutely, they did a lot. But as Alex Jones said at the foundation meeting last week, how much do you need, Israel? And I said to him, I need more. I need more so that I can feel comfortable that when Ashanti takes over, she's not looking at deficits. So for those reasons, I'm very concerned. And I think now I'll take questions before we take the motion to the table, or we move to adopt, because there's a couple of votes that we got to take first before we adopt the big budget. Any questions?
All right, questions from the board.
I'm going to go how I see it. So I see Emily first, and then I'll just go down. Okay. So Emily, and then I saw Adam just pop up, and then Kevin, you pop up. All right, Emily.
Hey, thanks. I'll keep it brief just because I know we have a lot to go through. But the first question I have is if this current budget proposal is based off of like what membership number assumptions this budget is based off of, because the number you said was somewhere, I think it was 35 or 3,700 or somewhere in that ballpark. And is that all members or is that including students and retired as well? Jennifer recently told some of us a newer, more updated number. It was like 4,490. And I'm wondering if that discrepancy is just because that includes lower paying tiers. So I just want to know what this budget is based off of and where those discrepancies fall.
Sure, great question. For me, this is what we made in 2022, right? These are the numbers that came in. So if you look at the budget, that money of 259 is the actual paying dues. Now, whether or not we've now been able to charge members more between December 31st and April, that's obviously, and I'll let Jennifer answer that. But I will say, I've been asking for hard data. How many members do we have out of Impexium? And that's one of the reasons why Ashanti vigorously supported getting rid of Impexium, for that very reason, that we could never find out exactly what we have. And if we do have 4,400, are we able to send the bill to those folks? Because Peter in the finance committee said, we're losing members. They're not even showing up on the roll, right? They're gone. They're not even showing up anymore. So how are we going to go after members who are no longer on the roll if they don't show up and we can't bill them? So to that question, the discrepancies, Jennifer, where did you get the number of 4,400?
The budget is based on, it's been really hard to get accurate numbers. Okay. So we know that at the end of 2022, so December 31st, 2022, we had 5,221 members. Crystal recently was able to run a report that I think in December of 22 versus now, I think this is what I shared with you, Emily. We've gained like 90 members, but our member count right now looks like it's around 4,400. But we're still working with Impexium on when we pull a list, can we be sure there aren't duplicate members that show up multiple times? It's just, it was kind of an educated guess as far as how many members do we think we have? How many do we know we had at the end of 2022? And what do we think is reasonable, knowing the effort that's going to be put in to bring back members we've lost and then still try to gain new members? I know that's not a great answer. But
no, I
really
understand. I know there's a lot of fuzziness, but and I appreciate that. But for 2023 budget, what is the projected number of members that those numbers were based off of for revenue?
I can't tell you off the top of my head. YPTC did the figuring, and it's based on some pro members, some retired, some students, and they pay different amounts. So we could probably do some math real quick and figure it out, but
And while Jennifer's doing the math, so Emily, that there, you just pointed out my concern, right? It's $350,000 based on what? Well, it's projected, it could be possibly, that's a concern. The other thing too is, for sure, it's based upon 5% increase in membership dues. And there's data out there that shows that when you increase membership dues, people are going to go, no, I don't want to do that. Now it's only $3.75, and people would say, well, it's only $3. No, there's lots of good data out there that says, even if people have to pay $1 or $2 more, but you're not giving them a value to that, they're going to go, it's not worth it to me. So there's a psychology factor to saying we're going to increase the dues. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have the same number. And I anticipate, one study said that you would lose like 0.5% of total. So, and I went by 37, not 44. But if we're going to lose 0.5% because you're raising the fees, I mean, that's still a significant number of people who are going to say, no, I'm not re-upping in 2023. So I think, again, you got to take that into consideration when looking at that figure of 350,000.
Okay, Israel, I'm going to go on to Adam, your question.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yep.
So if we're basing membership on everybody's a pro member at $75 a year, that's about 4,700 members.
But we don't know if those 4,700 members are paying members, right? I mean, they didn't show up last year in the books, right?
Well, we don't even have 4,700 paying members.
My point exactly.
So we're projecting we're projecting a membership increase with the 2023 budget.
That's the optimism that
Right,
that headquarters is coming. Yeah, they're being optimistic. And I said this to Jennifer and finance committee. I said, look, if that's the approach, fantastic. You have 1 year. You have 1 year. You've saved a couple of jobs. HQ is on notice, because next year, if there's a budget deficit, you know, if you didn't come up with those figures, right? That's just any business. You have now set yourself to go, we're going to have 4,400 paying members by the end of fourth quarter. Okay, great. Now that's their number. And next year, if you don't hit that number, then the next board will say, what happened?
Adam?
Thank you. So I had a quick question about the revenue and how much we lost at the convention. So I wrote down we were projecting to make $108,000 at the convention, correct? And we lost $14,000. That was the deficit in it. So I mean, that's a pretty that's missing the mark by quite a bit. I'm assuming it was our previous executive director that made that projection. So I'm new to the board. This is my first year. Israel, you've been on the board before. Is that type of inflated number an anomaly, or do we have any idea if that's happened in previous years before?
I haven't. Jennifer could speak more to the inflated numbers, and I know Jennifer, you said we anticipated 100. You said 130, right? I know the number is there.
108, I believe it was.
Yeah, but if you look at the adopted budget for FY 2022, the previous executive director said that our registration fees would come in at 225.
Okay, so
that's a huge difference between 225 and, you know, the number that's being thrown around now.
right, and you know, I mean, I also want to note we got $25,000 from the NBA. That was a sponsorship that Rebecca got us last year without, I mean, the numbers were inflated, and it seemed like our previous staff members did not make any effort to actually do that. A volunteer. I mean, yes, Rebecca was the president, but she's still a volunteer, had to go do that. So yeah, I'm just curious if that's something that's been happening for a while, because if it has been, that might help explain why we've gotten into the situation we're in.
I know coming out of 21 and going into 22, we had $125,000 in surplus, 125,000, but 125,000 with 180,000 that came in from the government through PPP loans, plus, several virtual events that we shouldn't have spent money on travel. We shouldn't have spent money on hotels, right? On infrastructure. And so in my opinion, that money should have been way higher. So to your question, Has this been an issue that's been brewing over the last few years? I can't answer for previous boards, but that's why I'm doing this today, so that I can make sure and say, look, these are projected, these are snapshots. Other executive directors have done this, absolutely. Jennifer Royer was very honest with the finance committee, right? Many times Jennifer Royer said, look, the finances is not my expertise, right? PR is my expertise. And we thank her for what she's done with this budget. It's amazing work. But you got to look at this from a business perspective. And yes, you have a snapshot, but the snapshot has to face the reality of the market. And I don't think in 2023, the market is there to sustain these numbers.
So I'd also like to point out, like, a lot of the previous stuff, all of the previous stuff happened before Jennifer was interim executive director. I think from my perspective, there was a little bit of a frustration that, we were paying 3 staff members to monitor our finances and put budgets together. And we wound up in this awful situation. We're all volunteers. Yeah, I know we're on the board and all that, but we're still volunteers. We were paying people to do this. And it seems like they missed the mark pretty badly. So I'm frustrated and disappointed about that.
Yeah, Adam, are you referring to the opening reception or just in general?
In general, the projections just in general about how much we were set to make for the convention and how much we actually lost.
Yeah, I hope it's okay if I just add out of order here that for the opening reception, I'm definitely disappointed in the loss of money, but also the fact that it was only open to 400 people and we had 1,700 people at the conference. Any conference I've gone to, opening reception is part of the experience and it's part of your registration fee. There was an inequity thing there going on because only 400 people could fit on the boat. So that was an error in judgment in different areas, not just financially. I'm going to go to Daniela.
Thank you for going, but I had said Kevin Smith would follow Adam. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
No, go ahead, Kevin.
No, it's okay. I've got multiple questions, so.
All right, perfect. I just want to be respectful to you,
Okay.
Kevin.
No problem.
Israel, my question's for you. So just clarification, because I don't think I'm understanding correctly. So you said that you aren't going to vote for the budget, but weren't you part of the committee that put together this budget and decided to put it in front of the board? So I'm just kind of confused with what changed.
Great question. No, nothing changed. I'm saying the exact same thing that I said at the finance committee. The finance committee knows for a long time, I'm not going to vote for this budget. What the vote by the finance committee was we need to move the budget forward, right? So it wasn't the finance committee approves this budget, because you could probably poll all the finance committee members and they'll all tell you, I don't like it for X, I don't like it for Y. But the issue is, and I think I said this to an email to all the board members, right? And that is, we are now in second quarter fiscal year. We have to approve a budget. Now, this is the best that HITS quarters can do without cutting jobs. I did ask for a draft budget of what does it look like to cut jobs, never provided. So the finance committee, what they voted on was not we approve the budget, but this is the best we can do to present to the board. Now, if this budget has 5 votes, it moves on. If it doesn't, yeah, we're in big trouble. And I want to make sure that everybody who's here, right, I want to be transparent and open and honest with everybody to say, look, I want to tell you exactly the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that we can look at 1 year, 2 years, 3 years out, because there's other issues that are being impacted, like the executive director search, like the database, right? The database now, we're stuck with it for a year. Jennifer, did you sign the contract with the Impexium yet, or is that going to be on Monday?
It'll be on Monday.
Okay, so when she signs the contract with Impexium, you're stuck with it for a year. So therefore, you got to anticipate these. But to answer your question, why do we have the proposed budget? This was the 5th draft. Actually, there were 6. I didn't see the first one. But this was as good as it gets. And the foundation knows about this, and now you know about that. So it wasn't I'm voting because I approve it, is let's get it out. Let's debate. Let's talk to the members about this and let them know everything that's going on. And then we can take a vote in public. That's why.
And then just to follow up to that, if I can ask it, you talked about, your job is to highlight the good, the bad, the ugly. So what do you think the solutions are? Because I don't think I've heard any.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Solutions are two jobs cut at headquarters. One of the jobs that I said we need to cut was a job that wasn't agreed upon by any board. The 2022 budget did not have, or did not anticipate, one salary. The reason that salary now is being paid for, now it's half, but there was a time when it wasn't going to be half. What happened was there was a loss of a grant from the Craig Newmark, right? And so that person was being paid by Craig Newmark, and he was being paid by the foundation, because the Craig Newmark grant went to the foundation and the foundation was paying for this employee. The Craig Newmark grant stopped. And what should have happened is that employee should have said, look, we have no money. The grant stopped. Your job was based on the grant, so therefore we're sorry. What happened was that the previous executive director decided unilaterally, without ever checking with the board, and the policy manual says he can do this. He went ahead and transferred the salary responsibilities from the foundation to the SPJ without ever informing the board about it. So therefore, that salary wasn't anticipated in the 2022. So that's a deficit in the 2022. And so my argument was that person plus one, maybe even two additional employees have to be let go because we cannot afford them. And we got to cut 401k for all employees. I mean, we look at the 401k line. It's very nice. That's SPJ has gone above and beyond to make the employees happy. But if we don't have the money, we can't afford a 401k matching, and certainly to raise the premiums on health insurance. So, and the reason to raise the health insurance premiums is because I think the number, let me see, let me look at the number. Right now, health insurance is at 52,000 for 23, but that's 52,000 minus, so that's 52,000. It does not include the health insurance costs for the employees that have been transferred from SPJ to the foundation. So when you look at the total cost for health insurance, it's almost doubled from year to year. Now, part of that is market conditions. Health insurance is going through the roof. So what I anticipate is that because we have generous benefits of health insurance, that number is going to keep adding and adding and adding. And so my argument was, we got to raise the premiums. And unfortunately, we have to pass on the cost to the employees because we don't have the revenue to sustain such benefits. So that would have been my idea.
Okay, let's go to Kevin.
Your mic. Kevin, your mic.
You're on mute.
No, I think can you hear me okay now? All
Good.
right, I think, all right. I have several questions, and so I'll start with the low end ones and work my way up into a crescendo here. I want a couple questions for Jennifer with regard to the convention. One of the questions is regarding the outside vendor. Can you explain why we employ an outside vendor? And I believe the cost is $40,000. Why do we employ an outside vendor with regards to the national convention? And is that a contract? And when does that contract expire? Provide me with some inside information on that.
Yeah, for years we had someone on staff who was part of their job was doing events, and those people left and weren't, the positions were, reassigned, reshuffled. And so I don't know, it was probably right before COVID, we hired an outside events person to plan our conventions, SDX awards, if they ever go back to in person. She gets quotes on Hotels for Future Leaders Academy, Student Leadership Institute when we have it. And that was a year-to-year contract with her. So we're in a contract with her for this year, and then it'll have to be renewed in 24.
So it.
Kevin, real quick, let me just make, so, because I want to make sure you heard what she just said. So, Jennifer, I had asked specifically regarding Katie Riggs. And so, YPTC has said, at this time, I do not believe a contract has been executed with Katie. So when was that contract executed with Katie?
I've got it here. She's been doing a lot of work for convention. I just haven't signed it yet because we were trying to see, are we going to do FLA? Are we not? Because if we're not, we can take it out of her contract and she would lower her fees. She's already lowered them a few $1,000s for this year because we aren't doing the SDX awards in person and we aren't doing SLI. So
Okay.
I've got the contract here. I need to sign it.
And that's under, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's under the expenses consulting honorariums of 40,000. So the contract for Katie that is pending on your desk is for $40,000.
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to make sure, Kevin, because she had said that, and I think you were going off to your next question, but I want to make sure you heard that part.
No, I want to make sure. So I do have my next question is, you feel like we are getting $40,000 worth of work from this contract vendor? Given we don't supposedly have somebody on staff who can make that work. And I think the
I
person,
do.
I mean, and those of us who have been, I think the person who left, I think we're talking about Chris Vachon, who did an amazing job at planning conventions. And obviously she hasn't been there for the last few years. So I don't know that staff has anyone on board who can do that.
No, you're right. Yeah, Chris did it for years. And then Basharat Salim was on staff after that. And he was our event person. And then he took another job. And then that's when we contracted it out. I do think we're getting our money's worth out of Katie. She does all of the negotiations with the hotels. She put together a bunch of RFPs recently for 24 that we'll talk about later. She got most of the sponsors last year for the expo hall. And then, you know, she takes care of shipping things to convention, getting them shipped back. She does everything that Chris did before. So she does work very hard and I think she does a great job. So yeah, I do think we're getting what we pay for.
And since we're talking about staff, I think that not having her as a full-time employee and not paying benefits, and probably if we had a full-time employee on staff, it would be worth more than $40,000.
Definitely.
I'll be the first one to admit that I have had serious questions about why we do this and why we pay her, but I understand from an employee benefit position why we do that. One more question regarding convention. We're in Vegas. The horse may be out of the barn here, but I think that I need to ask this question for my own satisfaction. We're in Vegas, and there are literally dozens of things that one can get involved with and do on any given night in Vegas. Is there any thought, or has there been given any thought, and is it too late to perhaps not have an opening night reception and give people opportunities to explore Vegas that night on their own and save ourselves money? And if we do, is the opening night reception in part of your beverage food contract? And is there an opportunity to consider that as a possible money-saving event?
That is a good question. It is part of our overall hotel contract. The opening night reception is going to be it's going to be poolside, the pool deck. I guess it's a pretty huge space. It's nice. And the F&B is part of the contract with the hotel. So I would have to talk to Katie about what that would look like if we didn't do an opening night reception. Would we not meet our F&B then, or, how would that look? But it's definitely something we can talk about.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk about membership. And I don't know if you have the answer for this, but being the old dog here. So when I was on the board the first time, our membership numbers fluctuated greatly from the first of the month to the end of the month. And Joe Skeel explained that to us multiple times. Billing goes out and we get a rush of memberships. So our membership numbers tend to be higher, several hundred people higher at the beginning of the month than they do at the end of the month. One, is that still the case? And two, this was a disturbing trend back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. And I don't know if it still exists today. And if it does, can you tell me? There was a time when our membership monthly intake was 2 to 1 in terms of new members versus renewed members. And what I mean by that is Joe used to tell us, and he gave these reports to the board, for every 3 members that SPJ would get in any given month, 2 of them were new members to the society and 1 was a renewal, which doesn't speak well to our ability to retain membership. So my question to you is, do you know if that pattern still exists? Are we still pulling in new members at a rate of 2 to 1 or even? And do we anticipate right now? I mean, the numbers you gave me was that I had, that you shared with Emily and Danielle and I, was 4,700 members currently. Will that go up the 1st of May if this pattern continues? And does any of that make sense to you?
It does. Yes. And it wouldn't surprise me if the 2 to 1 is still a thing, because we'll do membership drives, or sometimes a president will say, hey, I will pay the membership of, however many student members want to join now. There are different initiatives that attract new members. And then it's just, I think, kind of human nature. After your free membership runs out, you think, well, do I want to pay this out of pocket? And a lot of people don't. So that would not surprise me if that's still the case. I haven't been able to dig into Impexium enough to really tell. And I don't even know if it would tell me the accurate numbers right now. What was your other question?
Well, I think to Israel's point, given the current state of the industry, I think that we can probably expect that we're going to begin, if we haven't already, we're going to see fewer people who can actually are interested in joining SPJ just by the depletion of members of our profession. I'm wondering if, given that likelihood, if we cannot come up with better initiatives to retain members than we've been able to do in the last 15 years. I know a lot of brain power has been put into that. I've sat through some of those meetings. A lot of things have been discussed, but it might be worth trying to figure out again how we might be able to do a better job at retention than we are recruiting new.
Jennifer, Kevin, can I, to that point, because I want to make sure that that's not
Sure.
lost what you're saying. What years were you on the board?
2006 to 2011.
All right. So, and where's Bob Becker? I know Bob Becker's here. He's got to be somewhere. There he is. Okay.
He's wake up, Bob.
No, he's right there. Everybody knows that Bob Becker and I seldom agree on anything, but he made me aware of a memo that is dated March 24, 2014. The memo is from Joe Skeel to the board of directors. And in that memo, he says in the 3rd paragraph, right? What's the problem that SPJ faces in the future? Line item number 3, SPJ will likely not survive as a membership association as we defined membership today. When Bob gave me that memo, it became a whole new thing for me. And I thanked him, and I've thanked him openly. So I'm thanking him again for this. And if anybody wants to see this memo, Bob has it, right? Joe Skeel raised this issue of membership almost 10 years ago. And that is, he believed there's no way that this is going to sustain itself if we're counting on membership. So to your point, Kevin, Can it be done? Can we set up, can we do an initiative? Can we do a drive? Yes. But I would point to Joe Skeel to say, however, keep this in mind, right? Because this issue has been around now for almost 10 years.
Okay, thank you to the board members.
I have one more question, comment, Claire, if you'll indulge me,
Yep,
please.
go ahead.
So I'm taken aback by a few things that Israel has said. And I want to point out what I think is been a bit of a reoccurring issue here with regards to this budget. There are 9 members on SPJ's board. 6 of you sit on the foundation. You have been involved extensively in conversations with the foundation about this budget and so forth. The 3 of us have been sitting on the sideline because we're not a member of that, and we get information as it's shared to us. 4 of you sit on the finance committee. 4 members of this board sit on the finance committee. This is the first time that we have discussed as an open board anything about laying off any members. If those kinds of conversations were taking place in the finance committee, and if you had gone through 6 drafts of finance committee budgets, and I am just now hearing about the idea that there is entertaining ideas of conversations about laying off members in order to justify or just reconcile this budget. There are 3 of us who are sitting here, have never heard this before. We've never been involved in the conversations, and this takes me by surprise. And my thing is, if we're going to talk about balancing budgets and laying off staff, that is something I should not be hearing about for the very first time when we're getting moments later to vote on a budget. And there's a problem with that. And I think the 3 of us who have been sitting on the sidelines waiting to hear some of this information and are just now hearing it, I didn't even see this budget. You talked about, I didn't see this budget until Wednesday. And I have been going over this, and I appreciate all the work that you've done. And I am not diminishing any of the work that the finance committee has done. But man, I mean, to sit on this board and hear some things for the very first time is a little discouraging to me. So I don't know if I'm going to vote for this budget or not, because it sounds to me like we need to have some more discussion with regards to what can and should be adjusted for this.
Let me address everything you just said. Okay. So first of all, the finance committee never entertained laying off anybody. I was the sole voice on that one. No one, and again, there's plenty of emails. So everything I say has emails. I'm a lawyer, and I make sure that everything's on the record. And I've told the finance committee my emails are open record for anybody. So I kept saying we need a draft of laying off people. We need a draft of laying off people. I never got a draft. Jennifer never provided that. And no one else in the finance committee said, that sounds like a good idea. If nothing else, I would say Matt Hall, Patty Newberry, and Jennifer and Ashanti and Claire, they were trying to fight for not laying off anybody. So I never had that kind of support. Now, Peter, for example, he's on the finance committee, and he is a representative. I consider him a representative of labor, right? Because that's what he did all his life, is support labor to not get laid off. And for the longest time, he was like, I don't know. And finally, what it came down to was if we need a new database and employees are let go, and Peter, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's when you started to consider maybe, right? That's a difference between operational cost and capital improvement, 2 different budget items, and one is a benefit for the organization. And at that point, he was like, hey, maybe we could do this. But at no point did anybody in the finance committee entertain the idea. I was and again, Kevin, I want to make sure, when you and I spoke, and I'm not going to say what you have said to me, but you and I spoke back in December, because I called you and I said, I need names of people who are going to be serious about the finance committee. And I ran these names by you.
Right,
Matt Hall, Patty New, right? We talked about this. And I
Right.
said to you, I said, now listen, this is a year where some very difficult conversations need to take place. And I said, and Kevin, I'm the person to make these choices because I have no aspirations to be the president of this organization. Right?
That's correct.
I am one and done. And I said this to you. And I said, look,
Right.
I got to go and write law review. Hold on real quick, Claire.
I think you've made yourself clear. but let's-
No, hold on. Hold on. He made some accusations. So let me at least address
Yeah.
these issues,
Okay,
right? Because there's other members that listen to Kevin and then go, yeah. So let me address these. When I spoke to you, I told you part of the difficult conversations is laying off people. And I said, and I should be the one now to make them because I can take the hit. You can put the blame on me. I'm not running. So therefore, blame me for that difficult choice. So that way you, when you sit in the board in 23, 24, you're going to be better for it. So, and then finally, I have sent emails to the board when conversations have been very difficult between us and the foundation. And I have informed the board, both Emily, both you, both Daniela. I've had conversations with Daniela. The idea that, gosh, okay, the broad perspective, I did send emails to say, this is what's going on right now. And these are the conversations we're being had. So
you and I had a conversation back in December, and you did broach the subject for the very first time that there was a potential that we would lay off people. Nothing has.
Not potential. I said, we have to. I said to you, we
Okay,
have to let go.
you were determined that we need to lay off people. That conversation, you're right, it took place, but that has never taken place in any other conversations that I have had with regards to my role on this board. So
Because
if
it's
you have
only
been
me.
having that conversation in the finance committee, don't you think that it should have surfaced to the overall board? I have to vote on this. Shouldn't I know minutes before I vote that we should have more discussions about the potential of laying off people in order to balance a budget?
There's no potential. There's no potential. There's no political. There was never any political will to take that drastic step.
Claire,
Never.
can I speak?
I'm trying to end this conversation.
time getting
Alex,
in.
so if you just wait 1 second, and then I'll be glad to recognize you. I was planning to do that anyway. So the point, if I can summarize, for Kevin, only one person advanced that proposal. Nobody else entertained it or supported it, me included. So it wasn't shared, along with probably 30 other ideas that were vetted, considered to balance the budget. It didn't advance, so it didn't get discussed, along with, like I said, many others.
Yeah.
Also, staffing falls under the executive director. Okay. Yeah, we could ultimately make recommendations about it, but Jennifer, if you want to weigh in, we also proposed furloughs. There are lots of other ideas that just didn't make it on. So yeah, that's the way it happened. It wasn't that we were, stopping from sharing anything with you. It's just that it never advanced. It was one person's suggestion. Jennifer?
Yeah, and I worked with YPTC to run different scenarios. If we furloughed some people for a week during the year, it wasn't a huge cost savings. You have to keep in mind that the foundation pays about 50% of salaries and benefits and 401k. So laying off people isn't going to save SPJ the money that it may appear that it would, just because some of that savings would go to the foundation. So also we're a small staff. We've got 10 people now. We used to have 15 at least. You let people go, you've got to let work go. So, I can't jump in and do the website. Karen can't jump in and do, design quill. We are all very specialized in what we do. And if you start letting people go, then if you want to keep the work, you've got to start looking at contractors. And yeah, you wouldn't be paying benefits to those people, but they generally charge a pretty hefty hourly rate. So, we've looked at all those scenarios, and I wanted staff layoffs or staff having to pay more in benefits to be a last resort, just because, I know there are some salaries that people think are too high for the jobs that are being done, but historically, headquarters staff has been hired at pretty low salaries. I would say most of the people on staff are underpaid, not overpaid. So that's just been my stance, and I just wanted that to be the last resort. So.
Yeah, and I had put forward furlough as an idea because I experienced them myself in my own job several years in a row, furloughs, and I know a lot of other journalists have. But when we did the numbers, we crunched the numbers, and it wasn't really a substantial savings. So, you know, we moved on from that. So, like I said, Kevin, there were other ideas that came up in brainstorming on how to resolve the budget situation that just weren't advanced enough to bring forward. All right, if there's no other question from a board member, I'm going to acknowledge Alex Jones from the Foundation Board. Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Claire. I would like to ask Israel, you've just heard the reasons why laying off 2 board members would not solve the problem as you imagined it. Why do you think it would?
Yeah, for the very reason that last week, here were the 2 questions you asked, Alex. You asked, is it enough what the foundation is doing, and is it going to get worse, right? And I was very honest with you. So now I'm going to do the same conversation I had at the foundation with in front of everybody else. Is it enough? If we had laid off employees, right? As Jennifer just said, well, that money would have gone to the foundation. No, that's the money we would have used for the database. That's the money that we would have said, hey, foundation, you now have extra money. We need the database because the database is costing us money. That is the difference between operational cost, which costs the organization money, and capital improvement, which is going to benefit the organization in the long run, right? And you know this, Alex, so I'm just going to inform everybody. The reason Salesforce was really, really a good idea, and again, Erwin knows this, I'm agnostic on this one, but the strongest argument that Ashanti made about Salesforce was 2 things. We're going to be able to send bills to our members because we're not doing that right now. And 2, Salesforce is going to help us with fundraising proposals. We're going to be able to improve in our development as an organization, right? So therefore, right now we have.
Okay. I have one further question I want to ask you. If your projections for the coming year are correct, will SPJ be bankrupt in a year?
I'm gonna tell you what I told another member. I'm not gonna say who it is. If that person wants to reveal that conversation, that's up to him. I was having a conversation with a member saying, you need to run for president in 23. And I said, if you don't fix this problem, you'll be the last president in 24, 25.
That was the impression that I have gotten as a member of the foundation board, that this is a moment of extremis for SPJ. And I think that however you can reassure the foundation board, which is inclined not to want to give you money because they basically have said the money we have given has been horribly mismanaged in many respects. And I think that there's a reasonable and not an unrealistic vision that it would be good money after bad if we simply solve SPJ's financial problems by giving them the money. I look at it different. I look at it as an opportunity to make a very, very important investment in SPJ at a critical time. But to win that from the foundation, and the foundation has the money, as you say, they've got $12 million. But to win that, you are going to have to, I think, come up with a plausible reason for the money that would be given for instance, the database, for the executive director search, for things like that, that would include the foundation, which pays a disproportionate share of the money. And right now is basically the only rescue operation out there. So I think it really is now in the SPJ court to say to the foundation board, and Haggett is on the line here, I think, we want to persuade you that we know what to do with the money you give us, and this is what we're going to do with it. And we'll justify it, and we will make a commitment to you to make it something that we both boards, which are interlinked, participate in. One of the problems has been a kind of jealousy about the rights and prerogatives of the SPJ board. I think we're beyond that now. I hope we are. I think that the only real opportunity to rescue SPJ now, because I happen to believe that Israel is right about the budget and about what's going to happen in a year. And maybe that's wrong, I don't know. But I do believe that the only way SPJ Foundation is going to ride to the rescue is when the SPJ board says, let's go back and really be partners again, because that hasn't been the case for several years.
Alex, just to your point, and again, Alex, you know I respect you tremendously. Last week in the foundation, I was like, yep, absolutely 100%. Here's what I would say, right? The issues of the foundation and the board, you know this, Alex, they've been going on for years and years and years, right? And I would make this argument, and I haven't talked to Ashanti about this, so for what it's worth. Ashanti made the best argument to both the Foundation Finance Committee and our Finance Committee as to why it was imperative that we have a sales force. And I'm not going to say who I talked to, but I talked to several people. We had the vote. We had the votes for Foundation to pay for that. I know we were doing the vote counts. We needed 16 votes. I would say this is what happened so that everyone knows what happened. At a finance committee, we showed up and Jennifer said, it is my recommendation that we do not do Salesforce. And that's her prerogative. She's the interim executive director. And we had said in the February meeting that HQ would do the final choice of that database. But I can tell you, prior to Jennifer showing up to the finance committee with both finance committees, and to say, it is my recommendation that we put a hold on Salesforce, I know for a fact we had 16 votes to get the foundation to go yes. And the reason for that, Alex, is because Frank Lamonte had made the strongest argument in agreement with Ashanti that when you just look at the date, when you look at all the numbers, crunch the numbers, how much we're going to spend in Salesforce first year, second year, how much we're going to spend in Impexium this year, next year, how much we spend for SurveyMonkey and all those things. Frank Lamonte, who's more careful than I am, he says at the end it's going to cost us $35,000, and he said it's no brainer, right? But do you know what won the argument, Alex? The argument that won the day is, and I'm not going to say who the person is, but you know who the person is, Bob. Sorry, Alex, Bob. It was Bob. Bob has been very vocal about this. We can build our own database. We can build our own database based on some open source database, and we'll just build our own. And I was like, wait, what? Are you kidding? There is no truth in reality. We have 77 prompts in Impexium, 77 prompts. The idea that we're going to build our own database off of an open source, that is just
okay. I mean, the thing I'm not.
We had the Salesforce.
Okay, but that's not the issue.
That is the issue. No. Wait, no, Alex.
The issue is trust between the two boards. The foundation has the money. You need the money. They need to be able to trust you with the money and how you're going to use it. And right now, the trust between the two is not good. And I think that the issues. Like I say, this is not something that I feel like there is a consensus that we need to save SPJ. And how that's going to be done, if it's with Salesforce or without Salesforce, that's for other people to decide. But if you're going to get the money, it's going to have to be based on a different kind of relationship between the foundation board and the SPJ.
Thank you, Alex. I do want to say that I have been trying to forge that relationship in my 5 months as president. I've met with Hagit several times. I put forward our needs and our challenges. I was very clear about what we need. We went back and forth many times, and I've been clear about it. And I also want to clarify that the new database was an issue in the last administration. Okay, I brought it up back then. It's been floating around when I found out that the contract was expiring. It didn't just pop up this term. So it's been floating around for quite some time that we definitely need one. We hear from members all the time that we need one.
I think there's goodwill on both sides. I really do.
I agree with you. And I'm trying to make it work.
Yeah, well, I hope that you will be successful in doing that.
Thank you.
Can
I
I quickly,
time to move on to public comment session, really. I mean, Adam, if you have a quick question, you're a board member, I'll give you
I was just gonna encourage us to move on. I appreciate everything Alex said, but
time.
we
Okay.
need to move on.
So here are the ground rules for public comment session. And it will be focused on the budget because there's a second comment session later on in the agenda for other items. But if we could focus on the budget here, please. We're going to do a time limit on each comment of 2 minutes per comment. Vice President Ashanti Blaze Hopkins will help with the timekeeping. And we'll see how long the comments go, but in the interest of time, we may call a time limit on it. We'll just see how it goes. All right. So anybody ready for public comment? It's open now. I'm looking around the room.
Bob Becker has his hand up.
Okay. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Claire. Let me clear something up. We're not talking about a database. We're talking about a quite complex web application that sits on top of a database that stores information. And I have never proposed that we build a database from the ground up. I have proposed that we rebuild the website using a different platform that actually we need, because our website is horribly out of date technically as well as visually and in organization. But along with that, there are a dozen or more contact relationship managers like Salesforce that are open source, that are customized regularly for organizations like SPJ and organizations much larger than SPJ, that provide the same services that Salesforce does without the annual cost of paying Salesforce for the privilege of using them. And whether that's City CRM or Odoo or a whole bunch of other very well-known CRMs, they provide those services. And just to clear up another thing, the idea that we will not pay for other services and that will cover the cost of Salesforce
30
is
seconds.
partially true, but we can't give up our voting system to take that in-house, because the first time we have a problem with that in-house, we are going to be accused by conspiracy theorists of having staff or somebody else put the thumb on the system to get somebody elected. So only part of what was considered a savings is really a savings. Thank
Mr.
you.
Becker, your time's up.
Okay, I see Erwin Gratz, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just want to point out for what it's worth that Joe Skeel and before him Terry Harper were correct. The budget is a snapshot. No action the board takes today needs to be final with respect to the rest of this year. So for whatever it's worth, I would suggest that the SPJ board adopt some form of a budget today. Clearly, given the financial circumstances, both SPJ and the foundation will have to monitor expenses and income very closely, and there will always be opportunities to make changes, always opportunities for the foundation to approve additional monies for SPJ at some point along the way, if that is perceived to be necessary. But none of that needs to, I mean, this is not the end of the story today.
Thanks for pointing that out, Erwin. I'm looking around. Public comment session is still on if anybody has one.
Claire, I'm not seeing any other hands.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think,
I'm sorry. Jennifer Ellis has her hand up.
Ellis, go ahead.
So according to the board policy manual, any expenditure that's over $5,000 that's not authorized in the budget had to have board approval. So I don't understand how the opening night reception was allowed to go $42,000 over budget. And because I don't remember a board vote ever happening on that, and I come to all of these. So was this something that we were expecting to get more sponsorships, or I just want to know how that happened, not necessarily to be blaming someone, but so that we don't have that happen in the future. Like, why are things that are budgeted for going so high over the expense?
So I'll give Jennifer, would you like to address that, Jennifer?
Yeah, I can do that. Thank you. There. So the convention was being planned, in 2022. Our former ED was working with the events person. I don't know the discussions that happened then. I was doing my job as communications director. Claire wasn't president then. This board wasn't the board then. We kind of got thrown into it last minute in the final month of planning the convention. So I can tell you the opening night reception money, like that reception was in the budget. It was approved in the convention budget. So when things go over budget or under budget, you don't have to keep going back to the board for those approvals. That $5,000 rule is for something brand new that would not be in the budget. So, if we decided out of the blue, we wanted to do another event during the year and it was going to cost $10,000, we would have to go back to the board to get that approved. But the opening night reception was in the budget. So it's just understood. Again, it goes back to the budget being a roadmap, a guide. So things are going to come in over budget and under budget. But we were thrown in at the last minute with the convention and what was still left to do. It was presented that, our options were limited in DC. I know that seems like not possible because there's so many places, so many venues. But like I said earlier, we were told that there weren't large enough venues available, or they didn't have the staff because of COVID. A bunch of staff had left and they weren't coming back. So we were presented with two options, the boat cruise or a rooftop event that was going to cost about the same. So it was a fluke. It was, 2022 was full of just problems. But I can tell you, as long as I'm making decisions, as long as Katie is doing the event planning, we've had many discussions about this and it will not happen again under our watch. I promise you, because that was a very unique situation and we never intended to spend that much money on an opening night reception. So I hope that helps.
And Jennifer Ellis, I want to thank you for that question because we've all discussed it very thoroughly and it was a big concern. It won't happen again under our watch or anybody's watch, I hope, because I didn't even try to go to the receptions because I heard only 400 people could go. Okay, I see.
Hold on, I need to clarify something else as treasurer. So
Okay.
just make sure that everybody understands, because Jennifer, you had a good question. The anything over 5,000, once a budget is approved, right? Then any other expenditure under that budget doesn't require another vote. So when we today vote on, for example, here's how much money is going to cost us for the convention, any expenses under the convention are automatically approved because we're approving the budget. So that's what it falls under. Does that make sense?
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying. Jonathan Meek.
Yeah. Hey, everyone.
Just reminding you have 2 minutes.
Oh, no problem. Simple question. I'd like to reserve my time for any follow-ups, however, to this question. I'm just curious for the future, what controls might be put in place or precautions, just so that we don't wind up in this situation again. And that's regarding the different budget issues, whether exceeding the budget or not being able to collect dues for a long period of time. Anything you can say to shed light on that would be great. And I do want to really thank Jennifer for the extremely transparent and detailed report that she posted. I read it right when it was posted. Again, I'd like to reserve my time for any follow-ups. Thanks.
You had a question there. So Israel, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sorry. And you, Jonathan, you broke up on my end a couple of times. So can you repeat the question? Because your phone died a couple of times on my end. So I apologize.
No, I do. Sure. Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. My question is, what sort of precautions are in place so that not just this year, but even in a few years, God willing, SPJ will be around. We don't get into a similar budget situation in terms of the overages we've had, in terms of not being able to collect dues for a long period of time. So just that general question. And then again, I'd like to reserve my 2 minutes for any follow-ups to this question. The one point I made is thanks to Jennifer for that long and transparent budget document. Thanks.
Yeah, let's deal with the collect the dues, because that's the biggest problem under Impexium. Under Impexium, and gosh, I wish I could also bring in Peter, because he's president of the New York Club. And so even, I think, Peter, did you say your name was kicked out of Impexium, or was a member of yours?
It was mine.
Not only mine, but also one of our members who's also president of SPJ was also kicked off.
That's Claire, that's right. So Claire and the member of the Deadline Club actually are not showing up in the Impexium database, which we all in the finance committee thought that was funny. So to collect dues, what we got to do is we got to be able to fix the Impexium problems. Now, part of the renewal of the contract with Impexium, the finance committee said to Jennifer, please, you got to talk to Impexium. You got to say, look, we'll renew, but you got to help us out, man. Enough is enough, right? We've had years and years of problems. Now, there was a suggestion that we go 6 months, not a year contract with Impexium, so that if it's correct, and this is just a snapshot and things change and we get more grants, then we can revisit the database. To the issue of collect dues, here's what we're going to need. We need somebody who's an expert in Impexium. We need somebody who can fix the problems. We got Crystal back in headquarters. She's awesome. She's amazing. She supported getting Salesforce, but she can go and fix that. So how do we fix the collected dues? We have asked Linda Hall, you got to come back. You got to help us with Impexium. And the foundation has got to give us a little extra money to pay her for that, because we don't have the money to pay for her. I remember last year that John Schertzer, the former executive director, after working for 2 years, he said to the board, then, I'm just now getting into learning about Impexium. And it's been very difficult, but I'm going to do it. It's not easy to get into Impexium. It takes a long time. So can we do it? Yes, absolutely, Jonathan, we can, but we're going to need the manpower and we're going to need the technical know-how to be able to make sure the collect the dues thing is done. The framework is there. I don't know if it can happen.
All right, I just have a quick follow-up clarification, Israel, for Jennifer Royer. Jennifer, I know there was talk about a 6-month extension with Impexium while we sort out some of the issues that Israel just mentioned. Can you just clarify what happened with that negotiation?
Yeah, they said they can't do it. They don't do contracts under a year. And really it would take, if we decided to go with Salesforce now, it would take months to implement it, to move data over. I know it seems wasteful to pay for 2 databases at once, but in the whole scheme of things, we probably would want to have Impexium for about a year, maybe a little bit under a year, just to make sure that the new database would be working properly and all the data got moved over and everything. So that's where that stands.
Okay, Hagit had her hand up next, and then I'll go to you, Celia.
I just wanted to comment on something that was said earlier, a question about the relationship between the 2 boards. For the entirety of my time involved with SPJ, coming up with SPJ the majority of the time, and then more recently the foundation, both boards got along extremely well. Extremely well. It's never been an issue until the last few years. I think some people got on the SPJ board who were new and did not perhaps understand that relationship or the history. It doesn't really matter why, but it's only in the last few years that there was, less of a relationship than it should be. I know that the president of SPJ and I met at convention before she was sworn in, with the conversation of how that needed to change immediately. And We've been working on it. And I do want to say that the foundation has done a lot more this year than, in my knowledge, ever, going beyond what we budgeted, what we usually budget. So when people say, why can't you just pay for this or for that? We have limitations based on our tax status as to what we can fund. And so it's not as easy an answer as some people want it to be. Why can't you just pay for a new membership? Well, we are not the membership organization, SPJ is. However, there were creative ways, in fact, that I brought to SPJ's president. And I tried. And so we had something in place. It was not our decision to walk away from it. It was SPJ who decided that it was not going to happen this year. So I don't want it to be said here that the foundation needs to open its heart, because that makes it sound like we're heartless. And I feel like the members of the foundation have tried to do everything possible this year. We, in a down stock market year, decided to take an extra full percent beyond what we usually pay. We decided to pay for more salaries. We found a creative way beyond that, outside of that extra 1%, to fund the Future Leaders Academy. Why? Because we believe in SPJ. We believe in the future. And also, we were asked if we could come up with $30,000 for a grant writer. That was the money presented to us. We did not come up with it. And we found a way to fund that too. So I feel like the foundation has done a lot. Let's move forward, folks. Let's pass these budgets. Let's move forward, start working immediately on next year's budget, because it's about time, believe it or not, to start working on the next one. And then let's find solutions and work together. Let all the suspicion and the division of this is our power versus your power, that's silly talk. Let's just get this done and go down the road together of success for both boards.
Thanks, Hagit. I was with you on everything until you got into that you gave us a big offer and I turned it down for the member database. I don't think that's quite accurate.
You didn't turn it down. You didn't turn it down. No, I'm sorry. Not you.
You just indicated that in your remarks, and I don't want our members to think that.
No, there was a deal, if you recall, to do it. And then in the next committee, it was said to us that it wasn't needed anymore because you were not going to be doing Salesforce. But it wasn't because we didn't offer the solution to it. It was because the decision was made not to go with Salesforce.
Well, the solution had some strings attached. So it wasn't just a clear, we'll give you the money, here you go.
Nope, it was a loan. That is true.
It was a loan with an interest rate, and there were, some power shifts on boards, and it was complicated.
Okay. So this is where, again, there was a memo circulated that did not come from either you or me. And so I don't want that to ever be construed.
No, I know that's
as a
we're not talking about the
proposal.
memo. We're just talking about what you just mentioned in your comments, in your 2-minute comment. You mentioned that there was a proposal to help us out with the database, and I turned it down. And I want to clarify that that is not accurate. Of course, I want a new member database. Ashanti and I have been rooting for that all along together since we took office in November. We're together on it 100% for many good reasons. So I've tried desperately to get the money, to get the help from the foundation on it. And it's just not enough to justify the big expense. It's too much of a concern going forward in the next 2 years, because it would be a 3-year contract. So it's, it didn't get resolved, but yes, I do. I will acknowledge that I'm trying my best to collaborate and heal old wounds that exist between the two organizations. That's my style. I enjoy collaborating. I want to, and we talked about it. I will agree with you. We talked about it at convention, and I hope it continues. I hope to continue that, but it is a complex issue. So, okay. Does anybody else? I'm looking for public comments.
Celia Wexler has her hand
That's
up.
right, Celia. I'm sorry. Go ahead. And you're on mute.
president of my condo board, so I have deep sympathy for board members. I know how hard it is, and I also have deep sympathy for what Jennifer has been doing, especially, sort of thrown into a job that's really different from comms. But one thing I will stress is that I sign contracts all the time. Every contract I sign goes to our attorney first, and contracts can be written so that non-performance is a reason to walk away. I have no idea what the Impexium original contracts look like, but we got out of a waste management contract, which is very hard to do. And luckily you guys don't have to worry about garbage collection. But the point is that contracts, it scares me to death that we might be signing a long-term contract, even a year. But if we do, there should be a non-performance clause. And I apologize to the lawyers in the room, but there are all kinds of lawyers, and maybe we have a First Amendment lawyer who possibly is not a contract lawyer. So that might make a difference too. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, thank you. Looking around the room. Jennifer, I think you did such a thorough job answering a lot of questions on the document posted in the Dropbox that may have shortened our public comment session. Just giving everybody one more chance. Jody Rave.
Yeah, I just want to address Hagit. I really appreciate your words about the role that SPJ, the foundation, has taken in supporting SPJ. And it has been a really crazy year. And, I had made my comments, and I feel that I just need to speak up about that, because we have Alex Jones, consistently saying that there is, more money that could come from the foundation. And I understand the foundation is the largest revenue source for the SPJ board. And I also hear that, a bit of conflict has arisen in the last 2 years between the two boards. And I just kind of want to extend that olive branch on how can we better strengthen that. And, perhaps we can find room for a grant that would allow for, both boards or the finance committees of the boards to, possibly do some sort of retreat on for relationship building to bring the boards closer together. Just a thought on how we can all move forward and really truly be collaborative and respect each other. And I do respect everybody here, and I just think there's always room for improvement. And if I can do anything to help, I'm willing to do my part. So thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Just those comments are helpful. I appreciate it. Adam Sennett.
Yeah, I just had a very quick question on something Hagit said, and if she wants or can't answer it here, that's great, or later send me an email, whatever. But I had asked this during the foundation board meeting. What are the limits? He said that there are limits on how much the foundation can give to SPJ. I had asked that during the foundation meeting. I know that lobbying, they can't fund lobbying, but aside from that, we were told by Erwin during the foundation meeting that if the foundation wanted to, it could give us all $11 million. Now, I'm not suggesting that, not advocating for that, but I am just curious, just for my understanding and for maybe everybody else's, what are the limitations to what the foundation can give SPJ?
Well, Erwin can answer what he meant by what he said, because I don't understand that either, but I didn't interpret it that way, but Erwin would better answer that. I can tell you that my understanding is that we are limited to a certain percentage of our corpus to be spent every year. It has been 4.5% recently. This year, despite the market going down, we increased it to 5.5%. We agreed to take on more salaries. And then in addition to the 5.5%, we came up with the other 60,000 that I previously mentioned. We are limited to spending money toward educational means. That's what our 501c3 status is based on. That's why we can't just give money necessarily for a membership system, to the best of my understanding. But there are ways, creative ways we've come up with to try to make that happen. But that is not, we can't just give a grant. And no, we can't just withdraw, $1 million this year because the foundation, first of all, I don't think the foundation board would ever agree. It was a negotiation to get them to agree to go to 5.5% this year. So you have to balance the fiduciary responsibility that our board has to maintain that corpus forever. So if we withdraw 5.5% every year, we won't do that, for example. It will dwindle. And so that's what it is. It's a matter of math oftentimes as to what is available. But Erwin can add what he meant by what you're saying.
Erwin, did you add? I see you there, Erwin, but your mute is on. I don't know. If
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry. And somebody's going to have to repeat the direct question because I was distracted for a moment.
I can just very quickly repeat it. During the foundation meeting, I had asked, foundation board meeting, I had asked what the limitations were on what the foundation could give SPJ. And
Oh, right.
yeah, and from my
And
understanding,
the short answer is, in some respects, there is none, except as Agit is pointing out, our charge as a board for any kind of an endowed foundation like this is to attempt to protect the corpus for the long term, which is why we limit our withdrawals from the fund. So it's a balance. Alex Jones was not wrong in saying that perhaps this is a moment for the foundation to do more. And as I said before, a budget is just a snapshot in time. So certainly we can revisit stuff if it looks like SPJ needs additional help, or if there is some future plan in a month or 2 or 3 or 4 that looks good to us.
so if the foundation wanted to, and again, I'm not asking for it, I'm just trying to get an understanding. Could the foundation say pull $1 million out right now and fund something SPJ was trying to do?
It probably could. That would probably not be prudent on our part, but
sure.
Could it? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm not asking.
There is no law. I mean, we do have a portion of our corpus that was specifically designated to a purpose. That's the Pulliam editorial fellowship portion, and we are not free to use that for pretty much any purpose without the approval of the family that made the donation. But that's only part of our corpus, and that's the only part that's restricted.
And is the foundation legally limited to just funding educational programs? I was under the understanding, and maybe I was wrong, that was an agreement that 2 boards had agreed to years and years ago. That it wasn't.
No, that's actually our mission, and the IRS does require us to either be following our mission or for other charitable purposes, which means which is the basis on which we were able to offer some aid to hurricane victims in Florida, I think it was, when we did this a number of years. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The aid we offered at the start of the pandemic. There was also a suggestion that we might provide some aid to journalists in Florida, but it was not necessary. So there's that possibility too.
Okay, Erwin, thank you very much. That helped out a lot.
And I'm going to just add a clarification as well. I mean, alluding to Alex Jones's comments earlier on, or question, and Erwin's comments just now about earning the trust of the foundation. There seems to be that issue that we need to prove that we will use the money wisely and with fiduciary responsibility. I'm open to suggestions on how to make that happen. Frank Lamonti suggested a development committee. Adding that to our committees, that's a good idea. There could be others, but we have actually been brainstorming good ideas for revenue income, fundraisers and other different ways. So we have been moving in that direction, but ideas for more direction is really what are really welcome from members and the board. Okay, with that, I'm just looking around the room to see if there's any more comments for the comment session. I don't see any. Do you, Ashanti?
No, excuse me. No, I don't see any other hands up.
Okay, well,
So if that's the case, Madam Chair,
Yep.
We need to take a series of votes
Yep.
before we take the full vote on the budget. So the first thing we need to vote on is raising the fees for membership. That's the first vote that we're going to take. And so, I'll entertain a motion, that we raise the membership fees by 5%, which under the bylaws, we can do that. Let me clarify.
I'll make
think
the
we vote
motion
on that.
since this is not going to be a popular motion. I'll make it.
Good. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, so we got a second. So the question on the floor is raising, so the motion is to raise the membership fees by 5%. Well, let's discuss that. But without raising that fee, then obviously the budget would be deficit, right? Because it's only $299 in profit right now. So it's up for discussion.
Board
And-
member discussion. I'm looking around. I don't see any hands, Israel, so I think
All right, so let's,
we'll do a roll call vote.
yes, just so that for transparency, let's go roll call on that.
Yep.
Let me, hold on, I gotta pull up the. All right, I'm just gonna go by how I see my board. Usually I would start with Claire, but I will go by member to member. All right, here we go. Jody. She raised her hand. She says, "Aye." Adam.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. Ashanti.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Kevin.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Daniela.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
I'm not missing anyone. And Israel is a no vote. Israel's a no vote on raising the membership fees. Okay, so with that, raising fees is passed. All right. On the database, as you heard, Jennifer is going to sign the contract on Monday. So if you have any more questions for Jennifer, I think she's already pretty much told you it's a year contract. It's I think, let me see, on the budget, it's estimated to be I can't believe it. Did I? Oh man. Oh, there it is right there. Okay. It is the line item is software maintenance. Jennifer, that's 22,000, right? That's the cost of, that's going to be what's going to cost us for the contract.
That's correct.
So 22,225 is the line item under expenses. That contract is for a year, so that's going to run into the 23-24 board. So is there a motion on the table to approve that contract?
I have a point of order.
Yeah, point of order. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a line item, why are we dealing with it separately instead of the budget as a whole, which we're going to vote on anyway?
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer kind of raised that issue, and that is big contracts. If all you want, if everybody just wants to go, hey, let's not vote on individual big contracts and let's just approve it as a budget, then certainly, I was trying to be more transparent because a lot of people who've been talking about this say they want more transparency. I thought, let's go ahead and do it, line item for the big ticket items. But if the issue is, Peter, that you think, that this is, we don't need it, then certainly we could just go ahead and not have a motion. And then it's going to be part of the overall budget.
I want to be clear, Mike. My point of order was a question, but I think I'd be interested to see what the rest of the board thinks.
And I'd also like our parliamentarian to weigh in on that too, Fred Brown.
You can vote on the budget as a whole. Unless someone wants to break it out into specific line items. I think either of that is possible.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to do. again, because as you all know, there's been a lot of people who are saying we need opacity. Okay, fair enough. On the big ticket items, that was my approach, but we don't have to do that. We can just, move. There's one more item we need to talk about before we vote on the budget as a whole, but I serve the board. So
I agree that we should vote on the entire budget in its entirety since it is line itemed out. I do have a question though for Jennifer, just real quick. With this new contract for Impexium, do we have any outs in the contract, as I suggested, so that if we either for performance or given just the history and the amount of money that they have lost us through the years, we should be able to, with a 30 to 60 day notice in the contract without any penalty? Please tell me that that's in the contract.
I've been going back and forth with them on that, and they say they don't put that kind of thing in their contract.
But I hear you. It's just, to me, it's at this point, like, I think they've eroded trust, to be honest with you. I don't even think that they've met their end of the bargain of the contract. To be honest with you, we could technically sue them for breach of contract because they have not provided the services that we are paying for. And so, I don't know. To me, I would almost lean on Mark a little bit to bring a little muscle to this and say, listen, we have some options. We could sue you, and then we don't have to do a contract at all. We would get our money back, and then we could go with Salesforce, which we need and want. Or you could give us an out of the contract to make sure that we have all of the balls in our court to be able to separate if we determine that we have a way to purchase another database that's actually going to meet our needs. So before you sign that contract, it's just my suggestion. I know you're the ED, it is your decision, but my suggestion is getting Mark involved and putting a little muscle behind this and throwing out that, yes, we can sue you and we can and we should. And so I want us to push with that before we sign anything with Impexium.
I'm going to add on to that. I believe, Jennifer, you have been discussing with them more support and more customer service, whether it's sincere. I mean, as Ashanti points out, there's been some trust eroded there, but isn't that true that you had conversations and already some results with that? Is that true?
Yes, that's true. Crystal's been in contact with them almost every day about various things. I had to jump in just this week and contact my person at Impexium that I know and say, hey, you need to jump in and get these numbers for us because we're not able to pull accurate ones. And so he responded. They're being very responsive. But yes, to Ashanti's point, I can have a discussion with Mark and see what we can do.
And Mark Phelan is here. Mark, did you want to add anything about this topic? If I can find you.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm on the phone. Unfortunately, my Zoom link did not work. But no, yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I do typically, we do review the large contracts. And this was a 3-year contract that was signed in 2020 originally. And so it hasn't been, reviewed up until, this is the review period now. And so I'm happy to jump in if needed.
Yeah, Mark, I feel like
Can I
we
ask
need you
another
in
question?
this.
If I may ask another question of Jennifer, isn't our contract term ending on Sunday night? What happens on Monday when we're without a contract?
Yeah, I think since it is a Sunday, I think I can speak with my contact there on Monday, and he knows that we've been kind of going back and forth. So I don't think they're going to just lock us out of the database on Monday. So, but we'll definitely need to come to some kind of an agreement on Monday for sure.
Okay, any other comments?
No, but I would prefer, as indicated, I would prefer to have this all wrapped up in the vote on the budget. And so I would move that we adopt the budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Fred Brown, can you just clarify, do we need another discussion?
That is a perfectly legal motion. If someone wants to break out specific parts of the budget for a separate vote, you could take a vote on that too. But you'd have to vote now that if you approve the motion to or second the motion to approve the budget, then the separate pieces of it need to be made as separate motions and voted on separately.
Okay.
So as I understand it, Fred, we're now, the motion's on the table, so this is for discussion of the budget, is that correct?
Yes.
I do want to bring to the board one item of attention, and that is what's not on the budget. This was an issue, so this is part of the discussion, so you all know what you're voting on. This was an issue that was brought up on the foundation the last time we voted, and it's been brought up by lots of members, and I do want to at least raise this. There is no money here for either a search for an executive director or to hire an executive director. Now, there's been a lot of concern about that on the foundation side, and there's been a lot of concern about that on the membership side. So by moving forward, what we're also sending is that the executive director search is in pause. I think at some point, I don't know when, I would have liked today, we will have to, as a board, vote on recommending to the president, if that's the will of the board, that we move forward and redo another search for an executive director. If that's the will of the board. My other concern too is that, Jennifer Royer is the interim executive director, and I've raised this with the finance committee, and certainly I want to be open and honest about this. I've never had a conversation with Jennifer about this, but she has that interim executive title, and I don't know, how long she can keep that title. She is making less than the former executive director, and I care deeply about equity, and I care about, inclusiveness, and I'm concerned that our executive director, our interim executive director, is not making the same amount as the former executive director. So if the idea is we're going to move forward with the approval with the budget, please know what's not on the table. And that means the executive director search is not on pause. We're not doing it. And I'm not, again, I think it's we should discuss it. And I think it's important for us to at least say to the membership and to everybody, here's what we're doing. And the reason I'm saying that is the foundation, at the meeting of the foundation, it appeared to me that what the foundation was saying is, we will pay, right? We will reconsider paying for, sending more money to the board for an executive director, but it's up to Claire and the presidency and the SPJ to move forward on that. So it seemed like they were putting the onus on us.
Yeah, thank you, Israel. I want to clarify. I think there's been some misunderstanding about that. I never said no executive director search until 2024. Never did. I did say on pause while we were figuring out the budget negotiations and trying to get some kind of a plan together. It was senseless to continue discussing that until we figured out the budget. So that I did say, but I am open to reconvening and continuing if we can do that in some way. The question is, Kevin, I see your hand up. Is this part of our budget discussion right now? This is a whole other area, and I'm just, looking at efficiency of time. You mentioned another meeting. I think the budget can still go forward with another meeting to address it, but Jennifer or Israel, if you want to weigh in on that, that would be good.
Yeah, listen, what I'm doing is I'm informing as part of the discussion of what's the budget, because right now on the floor is to approve the budget.
Right.
My job is to not just tell you what's in the budget, but what's not in the budget. And that's a huge item because it was a big item of discussion with the foundation. I've seen many members talk about where is the executive director search? Where's the money for that? And so I want to make sure that the board members know that as far as we're concerned, there is no executive director search. That's one concern. My other concern is the salary of the executive director. Right now, it's much lower than her male counterpart, John Schertzer.
Well, there's no executive director search firm is what we've ruled out because of the expense of it. Right. Not that we've talked about doing the search in-house, which has been done before, and there would be no cost.
And you would have to set up that you'd have to
We
decision.
have a committee already set up. We'd have to continue with it and grow it. So I think Jennifer made these clear in her PowerPoint. You had a slide, Jennifer, that said what's not allocated. Am I correct about that? You did list them.
Right. That's correct. And the big ticket items are the member database is not in this budget. The executive director search firm is not in this budget. An executive director's salary is not in this budget. And the salaries of a communications director, an administrative assistant, accounting staff, none of those are in this budget. So,
I mean, when I took office, I did make, of course, I wanted to have a search firm. That was sort of my wish. And, you know, so, but then when it became clear, you know, the situation didn't become clear right away in my term. It took some time before things became clear to everybody, and me included. So then I realized it was not affordable. Okay, I see Kevin had his hand up and I see two more. So Kevin first.
Mike?
We're not hearing you, Kevin. You're on mute. No, you're good.
All right, this budget is becoming more and more difficult for me to vote for. This latest, this Impexium thing, Ashanti's right. We as a board had this conversation back in November, and we talked about failure to perform and talked out loud about how much money Impexium is costing this organization by being negligent in the way it's been providing us a service for our membership. And here we are, ready to vote on a budget that includes another contract, a year contract with the same organization that is telling us that they're not going to be interested in a performance clause, and we have to sign a one-year contract with them. And we're looping that into the budget. I tell you what, that's a bitter pill for me to swallow right now. I don't understand why we are still talking about this and dealing with this and getting pushback from them the day, 7 months later.
Claire, can I just address one thing? This is Mark
Yes, please,
Balin.
Mark Balin.
Yeah, the existing contract with Impexium does have a performance clause, and if we believe that they've breached performance, we have every right to notify them of the breach. And there is a cure period. They would have 30 days to cure, and then if they fail to cure, we can terminate. So there is a performance clause, there is a termination clause in the existing contract, which would be the term, and those terms would carry over for the renewal. So
that's great. That's great. And I think that we should exercise that. And I think that if Jennifer is having that conversation, Mark, then maybe you should have that conversation with them and refresh their memory with regards to the contract, because I was under the impression that we hadn't determined that existed. So
Can I, answer, Kevin? That's fine. If we cancel the contract in 30 days, what do we have to take over on day 31? What happens to all our information on that database? We got to think long term.
well, you're right. But what's this contract? What's this contract going to cost us for another year? What's the price tag on that?
22,000.
22,000 for a year.
Okay, Ashanti.
Yeah, I wanted to, because I'm seeing some people mention about the executive search firm and the search and all of these things. And as the current chair of that committee, I did want to point out a couple of things. So number one, as a committee, we were already having conversations about how we could do an internal search and not use an executive search firm. So Frank Lamonti came up with a great idea of how we could, source our own contacts and how we could leverage those to potentially find someone to come in. But here's the issue. We have the ability to do that, yes. What we don't have in the budget is the ability to onboard anyone else. I don't know if everyone paid laser attention to what Jennifer said. Her old position is no longer in existence in this budget, which means if she does not get the executive director position, we have no way to pay her for any other position. So if she goes back to her old position, if we're creating a new position for her, there's no money in the budget for that. And I think that that is the important thing to keep in mind. It is not that we cannot do a search without an executive search firm. We've already had those conversations about how we could do that. The issue is the budget is not there to onboard anyone else at this point, right? So I just want people to keep that in mind. We can do an internal search. Where are we going to find the money to onboard someone? And then where are we going to find the money if Jennifer is not that person to make sure that she has a job to go back to? So please, please keep that in mind when we're having those discussions, because context is really, really necessary in that particular conversation.
And just following you, Ashanti, yes, we don't have in the budget the higher salary demand that would have to be in place for another person coming in. I mean, Jennifer's salary is below market value on ED salaries at the moment, so.
And Claire, just so that, because I want to make sure, because Shanti is absolutely correct. It was my understanding at the foundation meeting, because this topic came up, that the foundation said, to your point, Ashanti, that we have no money for a new executive director to be on board and for the salary of Jennifer. It's my understanding that the foundation said, when and if your committee does move forward and you interview and you have people and then we interview, that then the money, the corpus then can be touched for that purpose, right? So that goes to Alexis Jones' point, that goes to Erwin's point, and that is when the time comes, this was my understanding, was that the foundation will pay the money. But what I heard was, but it's up to Claire to decide to move forward with the ED search. So I just want to make sure that everybody here is, they're saying it's up to us. We're saying it's up to them. My understanding of everybody is, let's move forward. This is what I heard. Let's move forward with the executive search. And when the time comes, we'll dip into the corpus so that we can pay for those salaries. That was my understanding of what I heard last week in the foundation meeting.
And can I say this, that is fine for us to have that conversation and figure out if that is the direction that we want to go in, if the foundation is able to provide additional funds. I would say for this particular conversation, for this particular budget, we have to approve some budget. It can be amended at a later date once we have these conversations and those specifics are actually detailed and ironed out. Because right now, to be honest with you, they're all fuzzy numbers. That doesn't mean anything to me. I am happy to hear that the foundation is willing to help and kick in money to do that. Problem is, I don't have a concrete number. So because I don't have a concrete number, I can't put it in this budget. And so to me, I just want to be clear that we are operating with what we know we have versus what could potentially come, right? And so, like I said, that is a conversation, in my opinion, for another day, so that we can iron out those specifics with the foundation board, between our two finance committees. But for today, we have to approve a budget. The fact that we are an organization operating in the second quarter off of a 2022 budget that, to be honest with you, was not accurate is a terrifying proposition. We have to stop. So I will say this budget does not make me happy by any stretch of the imagination. And I would say that I could speak confidently for everyone else who was on the finance committee that they feel the same. But at the end of the day, best practices for any organization is that we have to pass something so that we are actually able to get actuals on what is happening with our finances on a monthly basis. This is part of the reason why we're in the situation we're in now, because we weren't getting that stuff on a regular basis, right? So I implore our board, right? We could talk in circles 50 million hours. At the end of the day, we have to pass something, right? And then all of these additional conversations so that we can nail down the details and the exact facts and figures and how these things are going to operate across the different foundation and the society boards. That conversation does need to happen. But for today, especially in the interest of time, because I'm sure none of us want to be here for another 4 hours, we have to approve some version of the budget, even if we don't like it.
Thank you. That's how I began the meeting with my welcome and my remarks, is that today's goal is to approve the budget so that the society, we can move forward. Moving forward is on April 29th, we need to move forward. We need to put a budget in place.
Does somebody want to call the question for a vote?
But Bob Becker has his hand up.
Point of order. We're
Yeah, we're only in the board comments. So I'm going to move forward on the vote.
I'll call the question as the maker of the motion. I think I get to do that.
All right. Here we go. Again, I'm going to go across the way I see it on my Zoom. All right.
This should pass by 2/3.
This has to pass by 2/3. So it has
The calling of the question, and then you vote on the question. And the question itself can pass with a simple majority.
Sorry, Fred, my head is full of mush. Can you repeat that again?
Yes.
Or Peter's about to do it. Peter?
The motion.
Okay, he's going to say that in order to have the vote, we have to vote on whether to have the vote. So that vote on whether to have the vote needs 2/3 majority to pass.
Got it. All right.
Right, Fred?
Right.
All right.
And then,
So this is a vote to have the vote. Okay. So hopefully that was unanimous. All right. So call the question. This is the vote to have the vote. So here we go. Adam.
Yes, sorry.
Peter.
Aye.
Ashanti.
Aye.
Claire.
Yes.
Jody.
Aye.
Kevin.
Yes.
Daniela.
Yes.
And Emily.
Yes.
And Israel's a yes. That's unanimous on that. All
Moving
right.
on- Moving on to the vote.
Let's move on to the vote. This is the vote for the budget.
right. And it's not debatable at this point.
That's right.
Okay.
So
We need to state the motion for this vote. Let's state it.
sure. Peter, you're the
Yeah, the vote, the motion was to adopt the budget as presented
The 2023 budget.
for 2023. Yeah, all that. That's how it was presented. Yes.
All right, thank you. Roll call vote.
So the call the question to adopt the 2023 budget as presented. Roll call again. I'm going to start. Adam.
Yes.
Peter.
Aye.
Ashanti.
Aye.
Claire.
Yes.
Jody.
Aye.
Kevin.
Yes.
Daniela.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
And Israel. No. The budget is approved 8-1.
All right. Thank you all for this robust conversation and good work. All right, we're moving on the agenda to number 9, which is Convention Program Committee. I'm going to hand that over to the chair of the committee, which is our vice president.
All right, well, I am, first I want to say thank you to the board, to the members of the finance committee, who've spent in an inordinate amount of time trying to get to this point. So I appreciate everyone for making that happen and approving this 2023 budget. So I will say that the Convention Planning Committee has been quite busy, and we have a lot of exciting news to share. So at this point, the convention is going to look a little different when it comes to sessions. As many of you probably saw as you submitted your proposals, we're going to have 60-minute sessions, 90-minute sessions, and some 2-hour sessions, which is slightly different, and mostly because of the desire to have more time and space to breathe for a lot of the sessions that we had at Media Fest. So I can say that we have now, as a committee, deliberated, and we got almost 90 plus proposals submitted this year, which was fantastic. And all of them were very well thought out and very impactful. And it was a very difficult decision to narrow it down based on the logistics of the space that we're in. So we now have 33 60-minute sessions. We have 3 90-minute sessions. We have 4 2-hour sessions. And within that, we will have 2 documentary screenings at this year's convention, which is very exciting because both of those films are quite impactful and timely for our industry. I'm not going to share specifics right now of what the sessions that we have approved are, because I am waiting to make sure that Karen has contacted those of you who have submitted proposals so that she can make sure that she is the one notifying you. I will also say this, that during those deliberations, because of the strength of the proposals that we received, I proposed that in 2024, when I am the president of SPJ, that we take a lot of those proposals that we thought had merit, that we thought would be impactful, but just couldn't necessarily fit into this convention, and turn it into a webinar series so that those proposals and all of that time and energy that a lot of you spent is not wasted, and that our members can still get the benefits of the programs and the proposals that you submitted. So I would say if you do get an email from Karen saying that we did not, that we declined to accept your proposal for the convention, please know that we will likely be reaching out to you to see if you're willing to resurrect your proposal in a virtual webinar format. I want to take this time really to thank Karen Sneath so much for all of her hard work through this whole process. It has been a wonderful experience working with her. I also want to thank the members of the Convention Planning Committee. So that is Claire Regan, that is Rebecca Aguilar, Carolyn Burt, Nicole Sartain, and Benjamin Davis Jr. They all worked very long hours and were very thoughtful in our deliberations. And I think that what we ended up with is a set of sessions that is going to be quite amazing at this convention. And we're very excited about what is to come, and for all of you to see what the session lineup is as we get a little closer to the convention. And I also want to thank everyone who submitted the proposals. As I said, there were some very, very strong proposals within that group of 90 plus submissions. And many of them we will end up using in some way, shape, or form. And so I want to make sure that you understand that your work and the time and energy that you put into these things, that we appreciate it, and we are going to figure out a way to utilize what you've done. And I think that's all I have to say. So thank you so much.
I was muted, excuse me. Shanti, I'd like to thank you also for leading the committee in efficient meetings. And it's very challenging to get so many proposals and have to narrow them down. And just a clarification so everybody knows, last year, we joined in an already in progress conference of the ACP and CMA, and the sessions were already timed out at 50 minutes because that's what college students prefer. So, and as professionals, we found that a little short. So of course, this year we have the opportunity, we're alone in Las Vegas. So the sessions are longer and of different lengths. And I think that's a great improvement. So thank you for making that happen. Okay, next on the agenda, we're moving down to the 2024 convention. I'm going to hand that over to Jennifer for a quick summary of where we are with that.
Thank you, Claire. We are in the process of getting RFPs from various cities for the 24 convention. Those include Indianapolis, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Savannah, Georgia. Most of them have come in. We're waiting on Savannah to come in. I think the goal is to discuss those in more detail at the May board meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Claire.
Yes, we're going to have a May meeting to discuss those and have all 4 in hand.
Right. Yeah.
5, I believe.
So, I know there's been some discussion about, do we even do an in-person convention in 24? Do we do a virtual one? Do we take a break and not do one at all and do one in 25? So, I don't know if Claire wants to have some discussion now about that. I see Bill just asked, is the date picked for the 24 convention? It's not picked yet. The RFPs include different dates in September and October for the hotels to get back to us and let us know if they're even available, for various time periods in those 2 months. So that's where we are.
Fred, parliamentarian, could you just clarify whether it's okay at this point to open up to comments on this topic, or wait until the comment section at the end? We're not voting on anything today with the convention.
If you're not voting, you can open it up to comments now.
Okay, I'm fine with that. All right, so we'll open up the comments on where we are with the convention, which is some of the points that Jennifer just brought out, and some of the cities. If you want to comment on those as well, that's fine.
I actually have my hand up.
Oh,
That's okay. So I shared this with both Jennifer and Claire, so this won't come as a surprise to them. But I will say, in kind of pouring through the budget from 2022 and 2023, In my head, I do have a feeling that we're still going to be in a difficult financial situation in 2024. So, it might be a good idea in the short term to consider doing virtual conferences every other year, starting in 2024, just to save our organization a bit of money. Conventions are expensive. It's very hard for us to be able to ascertain how many members are going to make that spend and do the travel and be there. So again, I think this is something that we can talk a bit more at length about once we have all of the RFPs in hand and we have a longer discussion at our next board meeting. But I did want to throw that out there that, I think it might be something that we should consider.
Thank you. Good point. Israel.
Yeah, there's no surprise. Ashanti and I haven't talked about this, but yep, I agree with her 100% what she's saying. I think it would be very prudent at this point, given what I just presented, that we anticipate that 2024 is going to be a very painful year. The other thing I would say, because Ashanti is going to be president at that time, 2024 is going to be a painful year for all journalists because we're going to be covering a presidential election. Given already how hostile the candidates have been, specifically on one party, I think SPJ needs to say, how are we going to protect our members in 24? And I think removing the planning for the convention could help then Ashanti focus on the broader issues that I think she's going to face in 24. So with that, I would also say, I think 2024 should be a virtual year. And if I'm wrong and you all have money in 24, that's fantastic. Go out and hire people. But if I'm right, boy, that's going to look like that was a great move.
Okay. I'm just looking around. Okay. I will add myself that, yeah, I think it's worth entertaining. It'd be a big culture change for us to do that. That's a big adjustment, but worth considering. And maybe it would give us the time and resources to focus on other kinds of programming, because planning the convention zaps up a lot of staff time and board time as well. In planning it takes the whole year to plan it, really. Is Daniela?
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I think that'd be a good idea. I know for me, like during COVID, when I went to conventions that I typically wouldn't have gone to in person, and just doing the virtual ones, I think enticed me once everything was back in person to go. So I think this could be a good way to get more members too.
Okay. All right. That ends the board comments that I don't see anymore, I think. All right, so that will be, the rest of that will be tabled for our next meeting in May. That date will be announced shortly, confirmed shortly. Okay, moving on to committee reports. So many of them are in the board packet. I did solicit them from every committee chair. And we have a few committee chairs here today, so I was just going to call upon just two of them maybe, just to give us a brief summary, because I'm going to start with Fred Brown, who as Ethics Committee Chair today is the last day. He's celebrating Ethics Week with great programming. And do you want to just give a quick summary of how that's been going, Fred?
Sure. We had sort of decided on trust in journalism as a theme for this series of webinars. We had 3 so far, and there's one more tonight. So I'm going to keep this brief because it starts at 7 p.m. and I don't want to wear everybody out with adding to the length of this meeting. But and tonight it is an open forum sort of thing where anybody who has questions about ethics, an ethics problem they want to address, something to say about the code of ethics, whatever, there will be ethics committee members present to answer your questions. And so far we've had an opening session about a documentary on trusted sources. We had a session with 3 SPJ luminaries, I guess I would call them, who are currently involved in trust projects ranging from the Journalism Trust Initiative to Lynn Walsh's effort to Sally Lerman's effort to bring trust to journalism, which was one of the first starting in 2014. And all 3 of them have decided they're going to continue to meet and see if they can collaborate going forward. And there were a couple of very good local sessions as well. And another one that I learned a lot from was Eric Wishart's session on artificial intelligence's role in how it can be both a friend of journalism and a problem. It's a great research tool. It's great for organizing things, but I think you probably don't want to let it write your stuff. So that's it. I hope to see you all at 7 p.m. Eastern tonight if you're not exhausted from this meeting.
Jennifer, could you put that link to tonight's webinar? It's registration required, I believe, and if you could.
Yes.
In the chat for everybody who is here on the meeting, that would be great. And Fred, thank you for all that hard work for your committee on making it a really successful ethics week. I appreciate raising awareness about all those issues. And I'd also like to ask Jody Rafe Spotted Bear, who chairs the FOI committee, to talk a little bit about her week, Sunshine Week.
Sure, thank you, Claire. So we had activities every day of the week, starting off with a column on police disciplinary records in New York by Roy Guterman. I had wrote a column, and our columns also appeared on Quill. So I wrote about Sunshine Week, and Steve Riley led a committee initiative on the top 10 most urgent threats to freedom of information at the state and local levels. We had a really great live webinar with collaborating with Muck Rock, which files, I think they've filed more than 117,000 freedom of information requests for people. So we did a live webinar, a 101 on how to file a FOIA request. And moving on to the Black Coal Award. So this is the first year that SPJ had awarded the Black Coal Award to a tribal government. And we're actually still getting feedback and press coverage on that. So I have been asked several times now to do a live TV, an interview with Indian Country Today, which has huge readership. They have about 5 million monthly readers. So I have been on a bit of travel here lately, but I'm agreeing to do that. Do one of their TV spots about the Black Coal Award. I also know that the Las Vegas Journal Review is doing an investigative piece, and a part of that, they have been talking to me about the Black Coal Award too, because there's a direct tie with property purchase in Las Vegas. So still gaining traction on that. We also had a column by Jeff King of Open Vallejo on willful destruction of police records, and then followed up by a live webinar again on the documentary called Bad Press, which was led by members of the Native American Journalist Association, but a really, really insightful look at what press freedom looks like. And that particular documentary was given the Freedom of Expression Award by Sundance Film Festival this year. So also, Ashante had mentioned that there will be 2 documentary press screenings at the convention in Las Vegas this year, and Bad Press is in the works to be screened by SPJ members. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Appreciate it. Congratulations on another successful week. Are there any other committee chairs here that would like to give a brief summary? Making the offer. Doesn't look like we're good on that. And you can read the other reports in the Dropbox on the board packet. Okay, and then moving on to community reports. I don't believe we have our community chairs present, but Jennifer, could you correct me if I'm wrong? If I'm missing somebody, there are a couple of phone numbers. I don't know what they are.
I saw Stacy over. I did.
I'm here. Stacy's here.
There you are, SPJ logo. Okay, would you like to give a summary of freelance?
I would, let me pull, sorry,
Yeah,
I wasn't prepared to do it
Yeah,
myself.
I know. I wasn't sure you're coming. It's okay. You can pass if you like, because you did a report.
No, I would like to. We've done a lot. We have added 3 new board members this year, which is a pretty big deal for us to add new board members. We've got some more diversity on our board, which we love. We pitched 4 session proposals for the conference in Las Vegas. We have already gotten word that 3 are accepted and 1 was denied. I'm kind of hoping that Ashanti will, that might be one that turns into a webinar. Just to give you a quick snapshot, we are trying to do 6 virtual educational programming events this year, along with 2 to 3 social networking events, all virtual. We've already done a Meet the Board. We've done in March, we did a happy hour networking event, all virtually. We just did last week the Business of Freelancing, hosted by Ruth Toller Carter and Hazel Becker. We had 42 registrants for that. We are taking a break in May. We're doing one in June on the multimedia training, adding photography to your skill set. We already have the host for that. And in August, we're doing how to find and win grants and fellowships as a freelancer. Then the conference in September, and then in December, we're going to do a one on taxes, what freelancers need to know. So we have planned out the year. We've got everything set. We have 530-ish freelance community members. We have 2,400 members on Facebook. We have nearly 5,700 followers. 5,700 followers on Twitter. We send an email newsletter each week that gives every week on opportunities for grants, fellowships, jobs, relevant announcements, meetings, all sorts of things. Every week we send that out. What else is relevant? We have our 2 databases continue to be updated. Hazel Becker spearheads that, and she's outstanding at this. The 2 databases we have are the upcoming freelance deadlines on deadlines for fellowships, grants, and contests. We also have pitching guidelines where it is populated with pitching guidelines for more than 500 outlets, with everything from what kind of pitches they want, when they want them, who to contact, who to send them to, and that sort of thing. I think that's a snapshot of us.
Thank you, Stacy. Those are great analytics, by the way. Terrific numbers.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that. Thank you for that summary. Thanks. Okay, moving on, keeping it moving to number 13 on the agenda. I don't believe Chris Vaccaro is here, but please correct me, Jennifer, if I'm wrong. Or Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think so, but he did file a report and it's in the board packet, so you can catch up on his caucus chair report. Okay, number 14, back to second comment session. So we will open it up to comments about anything other than the budget, hopefully. I mean, you're free to comment on the budget, but we've tried to move on from that, and any other subject is welcome. And again, we're going to, same housekeeping rules are in order. So Ashanti, could you help me with the timekeeping, please, at 2 minutes per comment? Okay, so I'm looking around the room.
Emily has her hand.
Emily.
Hi, I just have 3 quick things. Number 1, totally unrelated to anything we've talked about before, but I'm at the Philadelphia Inquirer now, and my newsroom this week provided training from the Transgender Training Institute. They're called TTI for short, if you want to Google them. And it was one of the best, most thorough LGBTQ trainings I think I've ever received. And I've received quite a few and worked at an LGBTQ publication before this. And I was sitting there really, really impressed. And I know my colleagues were as well. I wonder if down the line, I know that we're not in a financial position to talk about a lot of partnerships, but if there's room down the line to talk about the kind of thing we were doing with Facebook, where we provide this kind of training for other newsrooms, or at least establish that connection and relationship to start, because it was really valuable for our newsroom, and I hope other newsrooms start learning about them. I told one of my friends who works at McClatchy about it, and they've already set it up for their newsroom as well. So I really, really recommend it, and I hope that maybe we can start doing something more formally to get it further. The second thing is related to the budget really quickly. I just want to point out that, like, while I was a yes vote, I do want it to be clear that I think the current budget is unrealistic. I think the fact that it was projected on an increase of members is really, really optimistic, but I know that we needed to be operating on current numbers and not numbers from last year, which is why I voted to move it forward. And I think a lot of my peers are nodding their head and feel similarly. So I know that this is not the end of it by any means. And I just felt like I needed to word vomit that out and say that. And the last thing I'll bring up is that after this meeting, that listserv, which includes regional coordinators and other members who had voiced frustrations and wanted to talk to board members, are hosting an informal webinar, and I'm joining and Kevin is joining. And if anyone else would like to, I'm happy to drop the Zoom link in the chat. So yeah.
Yeah, could you go ahead and drop that link, please? That'd be great.
Totally. I'm happy to do that. Thanks, y'all. That's all I have.
Daniela.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight something that we as an organization spoke out against a couple weeks ago. So I'm in Oklahoma, I'm in Tulsa, and a county that's about 3 hours south of here. A couple weeks ago, it came out that the county sheriff threatened to kill 2 reporters, and I think we were the only organization who spoke up about that. Since that happened, one of the commissioners resigned, the sheriff is not. But I just wanted to praise the organization for speaking up, because, like I said, I don't think anyone else has, and this is a big deal. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Daniela. Kevin Smith.
Yes. So the information that Stephanie gave with regards to the freelance committee was astounding to me. And congratulations to her and Hazel and all those people involved. If 1 out of every 8 members of our organization is a freelancer, I'm wondering if there is not a roadmap from that committee to increase our membership. I think that's a door that we should open. And since the foundation does fund educational opportunities, I would hope that in the future we could figure out ways to funnel some money into that committee so they can continue to do more webinars and more teaching and those things, in hopes that we will corral more members going forward.
Great positive suggestion. Thank you, Kevin. Love the
Thank you, Kevin.
Love the positivity there. That's great. Jonathan.
Hey there, just a quick follow-up question to be looking ahead on controls and accountability. At the time we switched to Impexium, hopefully folks can hear me, there were a lot of promises made about how that would rectify the problems we were having with the previous database at that time. Obviously, this didn't come to fruition. So I know we're not going to switch imminently to a new CRM, but I'm wondering what safeguards might we put in place this time, because we heard very similar things last time and there were very similar problems last time. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Just looking around the room. Shanti, do you see any other hands?
I do not.
Okay. So I'm going to close the public comment session now and go on to old and new business. Let me just see if I'm in the right order here. Yeah, so we will notify membership and of course board about the May meeting. We will revisit Fellows of the Society. I'm going to suggest that that's the next item on the agenda. I'm going to suggest that we table that item because we're into 3 hours now in our meeting today. So I would like to propose that the only business I have is that we will have a May meeting, obviously to address the convention 2024, but also I'd like to move into the next item and propose tabling our discussion of Fellows of the Society. That takes a good chunk of time to really give it what it's due. I think Jennifer, you could tell us how many nominations we have. It would be good to share that with the members.
Right, we've received about 20, maybe 22 nominations, so there are quite a few to go through.
Yeah, yeah, and also we will get that material to our board earlier. And let's see, I see some more hands up. Fred, is public comment session is over. I guess I can recognize anybody anytime, right? So, okay, Adam.
Yeah, I just had a quick procedural question about voting for the fellows. So I nominated like 4 journalists for the fellows. Because I nominated people, do I have to recuse myself from voting? It's fine if I do. I just want to know.
Okay, I'm glad you raised that question. I nominated as well. I believe some other people did too on the board. So either Fred, you could chime in about that as a parliamentarian, but maybe that's more of a Mark Balin question.
I don't think there's any parliamentary rule about that. It's just a matter of ethics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Fred. I don't think there's anything, but I think disclosing it to the fellow board members that this was a person that you nominated would be good practice.
I think it says so on all of the nominations. Might you know this? But I just wanted to make sure.
All right, that's good to clarify. Thank you. All right, let me go back to Jonathan. Go ahead, Jonathan. Do you still have your hand up or is it new?
Yeah, and I'm sorry that I know I'm having sound issues on my end. So the thing I said during the public comment a few minutes ago is actually a question. Let me repeat it because I was hoping to get an answer.
Okay.
The question is, what is being envisioned or already underway looking forward so that if and when we switch CRMs, databases again, we won't have the same problems we had with Impexium. The reason I ask is there was a similar conversation several years ago when we had similar problems with our last CRM, and we heard a lot of promises, and by promises, I don't necessarily mean from individuals, but we heard promises from the company and how this would be much better. Apparently those things didn't come to fruition. And so we're having the same problems now. So again, looking forward, that's the question. Thank you.
I can just add an answer to that. And that is, it's actually selection of a database is a staff decision. It's ED and staff decides that. But since we've received as a board, we've received so many complaints about membership issues, I called together a committee and led by Ashanti, and we worked with the staff. It was a committee of staff and volunteer board members, and we, vetted different options, and it was a robust discussion about that. So I think that's different from the last time. More voices, always a good thing to me. More options, right? Jennifer, did you want to add anything about that?
That pretty much covers it. I think in our research, we've learned that a lot of these vendors, a lot of these companies make big promises, but our needs are so complex sometimes because we have chapters and regions and we slice and dice our data in so many different ways that there are very few that can really handle our needs. And that's why Salesforce kind of rose to the top.
Yeah.
But until you actually get in and use a database, you don't really know if it's going to be what you need or not in all ways. So yeah, I think having more voices, having more people involved in the research and the discussion is good. And then we need to pick the one that we think is the best suited for our needs and start working in it. I think that's something moving forward with the contract. We will push to have a good exit strategy in case they don't meet our needs, like use it for 6 months and then we can get out of it if it isn't doing what we need it to do. But I think a lot of us have learned a lot about the process and yeah, the last time we made the decision about Impexium, there were just a handful of staff members who were involved in that. So that will not be the case this time.
This is a good time to give a shout out to Crystal O'Keefe, who has really, she's toned down the complaints because she does personal outreach to all the members and the leaders who have trouble with membership issues, the database issues, and she's done a great job at sort of being our liaison. to solve the problems. A lot of people have been complimenting her. Jennifer, please pass that along, about her great, customer service. She's making up for the deficits that we've experienced with Impexium, I would say. Not the right way to exist, but at least she's really helping us, and we're grateful. And also, she recommends, of all the, how many did we vet? 30, I'd say, 30, more than 30 different database companies. She recommends Salesforce, and Salesforce is used by the Pointer Institute. So to me, that's also a plus. Although most expensive, that's the one that really comes out on top on multiple levels. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
Thank you both. And I want to recognize her help as well. Thank you.
Yep, she's been great staff member. Okay, I'm looking around. I don't see anything else. Okay, so Fred Brown, can you just clarify, do I need a vote to table the Fellows of the Society to the next meeting in May?
I think you could do that as the presiding officer.
I can just do it myself. Okay.
But if you want to be absolutely down,
ethical, okay.
rigid about it, you can have a vote.
All right, can somebody call that vote, please?
Yeah, I move that we table the Fellows of the Society discussion and deliberation to our next board meeting in May.
A second.
Thank you, guys. Okay.
You do a show of hands too.
Yeah, show of hands, all in favor? Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, looks like it was unanimous. Okay, great. Thank you, board members. Appreciated. All right, I'm going to number 18, which is we're ready to adjourn. And I do want to say thank you to all of you, board members, staff, leaders, membership. We're so grateful. Lively, robust discussion, difficult but successful, because more voices, the better. The more voices, the better. And I'm grateful for that as president. And thank you for coming today. Appreciate your time. Okay.
Wait, do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yep, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
You're making the motion, Ashanti?
Yep.
Okay,
Second.
Second by, who said that?
I did.
Peter, second by Peter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? It's official, adjourned. Thank you, guys.